Chapter 3856. Gaga. A sneer like that of a night owl was heard. A wisp of smoke-like shadow flew out from the light hole along with the black chi. Amidst the sneer, it expanded like a balloon. In a short moment, it transformed into a body that was 100 jong in size. Xiao Hua's heavens, I could clearly see that this ghost's body was covered in a mist-formed official's robe. This official's robe was very strange. In the pitch-black death chi, it presented a terrifying scarlet color. The official's robe was engraved with a grey river and a malevolent ghost beast. The beast's head was like an ordinary general's armor, protecting the front of the ghost's chest. In the middle of the official's robe, there was an almost colorless robe belt. On the ghost's head, there was a red official's hat. On both sides of the official's hat, there were two ghosts formed from death chi. They were looking at Xiao Hua with their sharp teeth. Under the official's hat, where the ghost's face should be, there was a surge of mist that completely covered the ghost's face. It was simply impossible to see the ghost's true appearance. Judge! Looking at the ghost's appearance, Xiao Hua was dumbfounded. Although he couldn't see the ghost's appearance, its outfit was very similar to the underworld's judges of the hidden immortal continent. The only thing missing was the Book of Life and Death in its left hand and the soul hooking brush in its right hand. Aoo! The ghost's figure was revealed. It suddenly opened its mouth, and an abnormal malevolent ghost face suddenly appeared in the mist. At the same time this ghost face appeared, Xiao Hua felt a pain in his mind. The ghost face was deeply imprinted in his mind. Immediately, Xiao Hua's mysterious dark cloud rapidly surged. It was as if a huge force was born from the ghost's open mouth, wanting to swallow Xiao Hua's soul. Rumble. There was no need for Xiao Hua to command it. Inside the mysterious dark cloud, Xiao Hua's soul cultivator Xiao Hua responded. Streaks of 3 corpses yin thunder seeped out from the mysterious dark cloud. It was like a torrential waterfall that defeated the suction force in the ghost's mouth. Along with the appearance of the 3 corpses yin thunder, the ghost's face flashed with lightning. Under the lightning, the ghost's malevolent face was smashed to pieces. Aoo! The ghost was slightly startled. It hissed and suddenly retreated. It seemed that it didn't expect Xiao Hua to be able to block its attack, and even counterattack. Puff, puff, puff. Just as the ghost made way for the hole of light, another 3 soft sounds were heard. 3 rays of light suddenly appeared in the pitch-black night sky, and from below the ghost, 3 human figures with red, yellow, and blue circling around each of them soared into the sky. Ah! Xiao Hua was. When he suddenly saw 3 human figures, he couldn't help but be alarmed. When Xiao Hua carefully looked at it, he couldn't help but be surprised and happy. The red figure was a wooden carving of an old man, which was exactly the same as the portrait of Jushi that Xiao Hua had seen in Jujiao Manor. At this moment, red flames were flashing inside the wooden statue. The flames overflowed the wooden statue, and lotus-like clouds wrapped around the wooden statue of Jushi. Zhu of Zhu of Zhu of Zhu of Zhu rushed out of the light hole. Immediately, the wooden figure emitted a fierce aura like a flying sword. A dignified will like that of a mountain began to chant, "The ruler is the leader of the subjects, the father is the leader of the children, and the husband is the leader of the wife. These are the 3 leaders. Human beings have benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and trust. These are the 5 pillars. You are a ghost, you don't have the 3 pillars and 5 pillars. Retreat, retreat, retreat." As Master Zhu chanted the mantra, streams of righteous energy condensed into mountains. They flashed with red light and descended from the sky, carrying with them the aura of eternity. Not only did they tear apart the ghost's domain, they even smashed into the ghost's body. At the same time, the yellow wooden sculpture also moved. This wooden sculpture was of a middle-aged man with a bulging forehead. Yellow flames flickered within the middle-aged man's body, and similarly, countless lily-like clouds wrapped around him. As soon as the middle-aged man appeared, an extremely indifferent aura spread out from the wooden sculpture. Similarly, a will that made Xiao Hua look up to him in or began to recite, "In ancient times, those who wished to benefit the world should first rule their country. Those who wished to rule their country should first unify their family. Those who wished to unify their family should first cultivate their body. Those who wish to cultivate their body should first straighten their heart. Those who wish to straighten their heart should first be sincere. Those who wish to straighten their mind should first be sincere. Those who wish to straighten their mind should first be sincere. Those who wish to straighten their mind should first be sincere. Those who wish to straighten their mind should first be sincere. Those who wish to straighten their mind should first be sincere. Those who wish to straighten their mind should first be sincere. Those who wish to straighten their mind should first be sincere. Those who wish to straighten their mind should first be sincere. Those who wish to straighten their mind should first be sincere. Those who wish to straighten their mind should first be sincere. Those who wish to straighten their mind should first be sincere. Those who wish to straighten their mind should first be sincere. Those who wish to straighten their mind should first be sincere. Those who wish to straighten their mind should first be sincere. Those who wish to straighten their mind should first be sincere. Those who wish to straighten their mind should first be sincere. Those who wish to straighten out their mind to know is to investigate things. Investigating things leads to knowing things. Knowing things leads to sincerity. Sincerity leads to righteous heart. Righteous heart leads to cultivation. Righteous heart leads to cultivation of the body. Cultivation of the body leads to unity of the family. Unity of the family leads to unity of the country. Unity of the country leads to peace of the world. Since the world is at peace, there is no place for ghosts to stay. Retreat, retreat, retreat. Zeng, zengzi. Xiao Hua's eyes flashed with pleasant surprise. So, Zhu of Zhu, Zengzi, and Zunzi, the three saints, all left their wills in the wooden figures. They left them here to suppress this ghost. The more Zengzi's will spoke, the more righteous energy it attracted. This unparalleled righteous energy was like an all-pervasive weak water. It flashed with yellow light and also rushed towards the ghost's body. Zhu of Zhu and Zengzi's wooden figures appeared. Then the other figure flashing with blue flames and clouds was naturally Zunzi. The will of this simple and unadorned, thin saint let out a golden jade-like cry. The ruler of the country is the use of the world system. The ruler of the people is the advantage of the world. If one obtains the Tao and controls it, then there is great peace, great glory, and the source of accumulated beauty. If one does not obtain the Tao and controls it, then there is great danger and great tiredness. It is better not to have it than to have it. It is worse than to have it. A country has its laws, and a family has its rules. Where ghosts live is the underworld. Retreat, retreat, retreat. Zunzi's words were like a flying sword. It tore apart the domain's deathly energy and stabbed towards the ghost. The wooden figures of the three saints each flew out. The red, yellow, and blue emitted a strong aura to suppress the ghost. At this time, the wills of the three saints attacked again. Three righteous energies with unparalleled power smashed towards the ghost. The ghost's face had long been shattered. It was now filled with black mist, so its expression couldn't be seen. However, the moment the three righteous energies approached, the ghost waved its right hand and a red brush appeared. Then, the ghost waved its right hand and a wave of deathly energy poured into the red brush. The ghost then shook its hand. In a few breaths' time, three strange characters appeared. The moment these characters appeared, they immediately emitted a ghostly wail and howl. They roared and pounced towards the three righteous energies. Boom! Amidst a huge explosion, cracks appeared in the void around the ghost. Even more blood and ghost heads rushed out from the void and pounced towards the wooden figures of the three saints. However, the ghost's red brush couldn't block the three righteous energies. The righteous energies that seemed to be able to destroy everything destroyed the characters and continued to pounce towards the ghost. Even the filth that appeared in the void was destroyed by the three-colored clouds before it could even get close to the wooden figures. Boom, boom, boom. The three righteous energies struck the ghost's official robe. Waves of majestic syllables came out from the robe. The syllables were like green seal characters that could communicate with ghosts and gods. They blocked the righteous energies. Although the syllables were instantly destroyed by the righteous energies' power had already been reduced by more than half. The fog around the ghost suddenly rose up high. However, when the fog gathered again, the ghost's body had already shrunk by one size. Keek. The ghost laughed nastily. 3 old farts. Your main body isn't even here, yet you still want to suppress this official. Don't you think you're being too delusional? Tonight is the time of the lunar eclipse. Your suppressive power has already reached its weakest point. This official has already completed the 9 returns matriarch-seeking array. Even if I can't destroy your wills tonight, this official's true self will definitely receive news of this official. It won't be long before my main body finds this place. When that time comes, it won't be as simple as tonight. My 2 old friends. Zhu Zi's voice came from the wooden figure. This old man has been suppressing this fiend here for so many years. The Xiantian true energy can only nourish living things, not us. I'm afraid this old man won't be able to hold on for much longer. That's right. Since this fiend has already sent news to my main body, there's no point in suppressing this fiend anymore. Since we've already become enemies with the judge, we might as well kill him. This was what Zhengzi said. Zhengzi's voice came again. In order to suppress this fiend, our 3 families have paid a great price. It's time to end this. Since that's the case, then, kill him. Zhu Zi coldly snorted. The fire on the wooden figure suddenly brightened, as if the entire wooden figure had been set ablaze. Moreover, wherever the fire shone, the ghost's domain collapsed. All of the death energy was turned into nothingness by the fire. Run! Or don't run! Seeing the ghost's domain break, Xiao Hua's eyes looked at the night sky outside the domain. His heart moved. However, it was only a moment before Xiao Hua strangled this thought. How could he escape at this time? Xiao Hua held the willow branch in his hand and stared fixedly at the ghost. Buzz! Zhengzi and Zunzi, who were suppressing the ghost in the shape of horns, also had their wooden figures flickering with fire. Moreover, they moved closer to Zhu Zi's red fire. This 3-colored fire was so dazzling. Not only did the true energy in Xiao Hua's dantian feel as if it was about to leave his body, even the ghost couldn't help but raise the red brush in front of its non-existent eyes. Right at this moment, Xiao Hua saw that the ghost was distracted and unhesitatingly waved the willow branch. Shua. Wherever the willow branch went, the death energy disappeared. An invisible 10-colored rainbow bridge fell on the ghost's body, Gaga, who knew that at this moment, the ghost would let out a strange laugh. Its fog-like figure suddenly moved. The red brush in its hand was thrown, blocking the rainbow bridge. Shua. At the same time the red brush disappeared, the willow branch also returned. Xiao Hua's hand tightened. The willow branch was as heavy as 1,000 catties again. Damn it, I've been tricked. Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. He immediately understood the ghost's thoughts. This bastard is loosening the reins only to grasp them better. He knows that this Xiao can't use the willow branch too many times, so he pretended to be unable to defeat this Xiao and baited this Xiao into attacking. He then used the soul hooking brush to replace the peach corpse to avoid the other side's attack. This Xiao might be able to use it once now, but how can this bastard just stand there and let this Xiao kill him? Moreover, since this bastard can dodge the wills of the 3 saints, the 3 saints might not be able to kill this bastard. -13. Chapter 38:57. Run. Xiao Hua almost instantly made a decision in his heart. With a thought, Xiao Hua's figure instantly turned into a gust of wind and fled into the distance. The green-robed Xiao Hua, who was hiding in the distance, naturally followed Xiao Hua's example. Just as Xiao Hua had expected, when the ghost dodged, the wooden statues of the 3 holy men merged together. The 3-colored sparks converged and immediately transformed into a pillar of fire that pierced through the heavens and the earth. This pillar of fire contained a vast and mighty aura that poured down towards the top of the ghost's head. The might of this pillar of fire was so great that before it even landed, the ghost's official hat had already split open. The ghost heads on both sides of the official hat had already shrieked and turned into pus. However, under the light of the fire, the ghost's malevolent ghost face appeared again. Moreover, this ghost face didn't have a trace of panic on it. Instead, its scarlet eyes even carried a trace of excitement. Gaga. The ghost laughed wildly. 3 old farts, you've suppressed this official for so long, but do you know why this official came here from the underworld? Today, I'll let you see the true purpose of this official's visit. As it spoke, the ghost opened its mouth. Pu. A thick golden aura shot out from its mouth and directly pierced into the pillar of fire. Boom! The three-colored pillar of fire's destructive aura was unparalleled, but it was powerless against this incomparably pure golden aura. The pillar of fire that reached the heavens and the earth was split into three. Moreover, this golden aura cleverly pierced into the three wooden statues at the same time. Clearly, this attack had been prepared by the ghost long ago. Gold. Seng Zi's voice had just uttered a word when it was immediately killed by the surging golden aura. Although the saint's willpower was powerful, it was still only at the 9th level of origin energy. After being worn down by the aura of death for so many years, how could it be a match for the golden aura? Since Seng Zi was like this, the other two saints also couldn't be kind. When the three saints' willpower was destroyed, the three wooden statues also fell from the sky. Of course, under the combined power of the three saints, although the pillar of fire was scattered, the pillar of fire still landed on the ghost's head. After the three pillars of fire were extinguished, the ghost's body was only left with less than 30% of its original size. Ha ha! Watching the three wooden statues flicker like embers as they fell into the hole of light, the ghost laughed heartily. Humans always think that they're smart, but they don't realize that how can humans defeat ghosts? What's more, I'm an infernal judge among ghosts. If it weren't for someone causing trouble today, this official wouldn't have suffered such a small loss. At this point, the ghost suddenly realized something and shouted, Duanmu Liangsheng, where do you think you're going? Xiao Hua's heart was indeed benevolent. He really wanted to spare no effort to save Wuyuan County, Jingyu County, and Fancheng County. There were over 1 million people in these three towns. Even if the 9 ghost caves erupted at the same time without any warning, even if tens of thousands of wandering souls and malicious ghosts rushed out from the underworld, he still stood in front of the mortals. He still let the green-robed Xiao Hua go to the three towns to lay down a great formation. He wanted to make some sacrifices. However, when he saw the appearance of the underworld's judges, as well as the wooden statues and wills of the three saints, Xiao Hua realized that the situation had far exceeded his expectations. When he saw the three saints joining hands to fight against the enemy, Xiao Hua understood even more clearly that the three saints were staking everything on a single throw. He almost didn't hesitate to escape. If he wanted to save people, he would have to take out a strong divine ability. Without a strong divine ability, he would only be throwing his life away. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua still underestimated the strength of the underworld's judges. Although this underworld's judges had already been injured by the wills of the three saints of literature, the underworld's judge angrily roared, Duanmu Liangsheng, where do you think you're going? Following which, the underworld's judge's figure turned into a cloud of black fog and chased after Xiao Hua. At the same time the underworld's judge flew, the official robes he was wearing previously turned into a layer of strange scales. These scales were like protruding mountain rocks, and between the mountain rocks, there was a faint flow of netherworld water. Layers upon layers of imperceptible fluctuations were emitted from this official robes, blocking all the energy of heaven and earth a few feet away. Moreover, as the underworld's judge flew, strands of black fog were also emitted from the mountain rocks on the official robes, disappearing into the night sky. The underworld's judge's roar was different from an ordinary person's. This roar instantly entered Xiao Hua's mysterious dark clouds, scaring Xiao Hua to the point that his body trembled and he almost fell from the sky. He really didn't expect that in just a few breaths, the three saints of literature would be completely defeated. Damn it! Xiao Hua didn't hesitate to use the lightning escape technique. Even the green-robed Xiao Hua didn't care about it anymore. Lightning flashed around his body as he flew towards the horizon. Damn it! The underworld's judge had the same feeling as Xiao Hua. Seeing Xiao Hua's figure that was faster than a meteor and the lightning around his body that made his heart palpitate, he cursed in his heart. Although his divine ability was incomparable, all of his divine abilities relied on the death qi. Now that he was flying in a vast sea of yang qi, it was even more uncomfortable than ordinary people holding their breath underwater. Although he could use his domain to block the yang qi outside his domain, he was just injured by the will of the three saints of literature. His strength was only 30% of his usual. Therefore, even when he was flying, he had to rely on the protection of the underworld's official robes. He didn't want to waste the death qi. Even so, the strands of black fog that were emitted in the sky was also the consumption of his body. If this continued, there was no need for Xiao Hua to fight back. Just the yang qi of the hidden immortal continent would be enough to kill him. Of course, the reason why the underworld's judge chased after Xiao Hua was not only because Xiao Hua almost ruined his big plan. The most important thing was the parameter in Xiao Hua's hand. To the underworld's judge, the parameter was 100 times more important than the thing he conspired in Wuyuan County. Since this underworld's judge could pay a lot for that thing, he would definitely not give up the parameter that was so easily obtained. The underworld's judge's black fog was originally very light, but it was also very fast. However, it was still not as fast as Xiao Hua. Seeing Xiao Hua getting further and further away, the underworld's judge coldly snorted and said with a smile, "The cultivators of the human realm really haven't seen the world. This kind of escape technique is admittedly incomparably marvelous, but in this official's eyes, it's not even worth shit." While speaking, a robe belt flew out from the black fog. It was precisely the robe of the underworld's judge from before. As soon as that robe belt flew out from the black fog, it immediately issued a sizzling sound, just like a drop of water falling into a pot of boiling oil. That endless yang qi quickly swallowed this robe belt. Gee! A strange roar came from the black fog. A gloomy brilliance flashed on the robe belt, and in a flash, it turned into a chain. That chain had some blood and rust spots on it, and green threads flashed inside. As soon as the chain was born, the entire night sky became several degrees colder. The chain flashed in midair and disappeared in a flash. And in the distance, Xiao Hua, who had already flown several hundred li, suddenly slowed down. An aura that made his heart tremble with fear pounced on him without any warning. Xiao Hua knew that his divine sense was useless against ghosts. He hastily turned his head and saw a blood-colored chain flashing with a gloomy green brilliance. It was like a poisonous snake, and in the blink of an eye, it already flew to the back of his head. Xiao Hua made a prompt decision. A green light flashed between his eyebrows, and he used the lightning flash and thunder roll technique. Rumble. Lightning surged out like a tide and pounced on the chain. However, the chain was really like a flood dragon crossing the sea. With a slight sway, all the lightning was swept away by it. Sigh. Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. He wanted to use the Buddhist seal technique again, but just as this thought appeared in his mind, before that chain even reached his body, an invisible band like a tight hoop came from outside his mysterious dark cloud and tied it up in an instant. Rumble. At the same time that the mysterious dark cloud was tied up, the heavenly patterns on it flashed with a gloomy green lightning and desperately resisted. Inside the mysterious dark cloud, Xiao Hua also waved his hands. One after another, green seal characters flew out from the dark cloud, and the mournful cries of ghosts and gods were unceasingly heard. But in the end, these could not resist the imprisonment. What was more special was that when the chain fell down, it did not bind Xiao Hua's body, but directly tied up the mysterious dark cloud tightly. At the same time, from the other end of the chain came a powerful force that Xiao Hua could not resist, pulling Xiao Hua's mysterious dark cloud back. Although Xiao Hua possessed great magical abilities, had a strong body, and had an unparalleled lightning escape technique, under the binding of the ghost's soul-capturing chain, he had no power to fight back. He could only obediently follow the force of the chain, flying back at a speed 30% faster than before. Furthermore, the force of the chain was extremely powerful, and it was the nemesis of souls. Xiao Hua's mysterious dark cloud was bound and deformed. Xiao Hua, who was a soul cultivator in the sky of heart, was bound tightly. Even Whitey, who was majestic and awe-inspiring in the blood ocean of the netherworld in the millions of Meng Mountains, was currently suppressed by the force of the chain, unable to move at all. What was special was that a pain that was several times sharper than having one's bones scraped was produced from the point where the chain came into contact with the mysterious dark cloud, and it went straight into Xiao Hua's soul. This pain forced Xiao Hua to tumble in the air every few feet, and he kept roaring in a very sorry state. Naturally, the ghost judge would not expose himself to the yang energy, although the yang energy had weakened a lot because of the lunar eclipse. When he returned to the previous light hole, the domain formed by the death energy was already intact. Xiao Hua was rolling and roaring all the way, as if he was tortured to the point of exhaustion. When he was pulled into the dark domain, his roaring voice was somewhat hoarse. Looking at the anger in Xiao Hua's eyes, the ghost judge laughed and said, "Duanmu Liangsheng, you're secretly happy. Fortunately, the one you met tonight is me. This is just a light punishment for your previous disrespect. If it was me, with just a stroke of the soul-capturing pen on the Book of Life and Death, your lifespan would be completely gone, and your soul would be separated from your body. At that time, no matter how strong your cultivation base is, it would all turn into flowing water. You, what official of hell are you?" When Xiao Hua saw the ghost judge did not immediately take action, he quickly thought of something. Enduring the pain, he stood up and asked in a deep voice, "Of course I'm the ghost judge. Don't tell me you can't recognize me." The ghost judge's figure had already turned into a malicious ghost. Although there was a kind of gentleness in his words, the fierceness on his face did not decrease in the slightest. This official's portrait is in countless paintings on the hidden immortal continent. -13. Chapter 3858. Xiao Hua pinches his chin, pretending to look carefully. After a long while, he faintly shakes his head. "The judge in the portrait is very fierce, far from your excellency's benevolence. This little one can't see it. He. Hearing this, the ghost judge unconsciously laughs. "Fellow Daoist Duanmu is indeed interesting. I wouldn't dare. At this time, how could Xiao Hua not know that this ghost judge has ulterior motives? He covers up the pain on his face, changes to a smiling face and cups his hands. "This little one is just an ordinary person. How could I dare to make friends with an official of the underworld? Calling me Duanmu Liangsheng, this little one is already endlessly grateful." Good. The ghost judge laughs loudly. "It's rare for your excellency to be so flexible. You're really a character. This official thinks that you'll become a literary star sooner or later. Your achievements will definitely be 100 times better than those 3 old undying literary saint." That day, if those 3 old undying could get along with this official so harmoniously, how could their family line be cut off? Hearing this, Xiao Hua's heart is moved, and he says curiously, "Official, this little one is somewhat puzzled. The decline of the Zhu family, Zeng family, and Zun family is obvious to all of the scholarly families of the hidden immortal continent. In the past, perhaps they were incomparably mighty, perhaps their power was monstrous, but now, compared to my Duanmu family, they're not even a little bit worse. When this little one came here to visit Xu Cheng, I thought about this matter, but in the end, I didn't get anything. I don't know if this matter has any relation with official. Little friend Duanmu, could it be that you've forgotten what position this official has in the underworld?" The ghost judge says proudly. Even the way he addresses this official has changed. Xiao Hua's heart is moved. He suddenly thought of something, then he exclaims with a kind of inconceivable tone, Could it be that this is all part of official's plan? Haha, of course it's this official. The ghost judge says with a smile. These 3 old undying suppressed this official here. They thought that this official would no longer have the power to fight back, and in the long run, this official would be killed by their Xiantian true qi. Unfortunately, they never imagined that not only did I have a way to deal with their wills, I also had a way that they were unable to touch. I control the life and death of all things in the world. In the face of life and death, all wealth and power are completely pale and powerless. Even immortals and Buddhas have to bow their heads. I only need to move the soul-hooking pen slightly and flip the life and death book slightly, and immediately countless Confucian disciples will serve me. It's hard to kill a literary sage, but to topple a scholarly family, that's really easy. Hiss. Xiao Hua didn't know if what this ghost judge said was true or not, but he still pretended to suck in a breath of cold air, cupped his hands and said, "Official. You really are an official. He's 100 times more scheming than us. Duanmu Liangsheng really admires him. It doesn't matter." The ghost judge raised his hand and said, "Little friend Duanmu and I didn't get to know each other until we fought. Not to mention the immeasurable lifespan, I can even give you many benefits that you can't even imagine." Official, what benefits can you give me?" Xiao Hua's eyes narrowed into a slit as he asked with a smile. Unfortunately, the ghost judge's body moved a bit and said, "Although I don't dare to say that I can give you everything, As long as you can use it in the hidden immortal continent, I can give it to you. Of course, you have to agree to my conditions first. Xiao Hua and the ghost judge talked nonsense for a long time. At this time, he knew that he couldn't delay any longer. Even if the lunar eclipse was going to end soon, the ghost judge would definitely not let him wait until that time. Not to mention that he was in the other party's domain. Whether or not the lunar eclipse would affect this domain was unknown. I wonder what officials' conditions are? Xiao Hua probed. Parameter. At this time, the ghost judge was actually somewhat stingy with his words. Oh, it's that willow branch. Xiao Hua said with a smile. Official, please wait a moment, I'll give it to you. Wait. Seeing that Xiao Hua was about to extend his hand, the ghost judge actually raised his misty hand and hastily said, Oh, what's the matter? Xiao Hua was slightly surprised and asked, Put parameter in the storage bag. Give me the storage bag. Ayo, what a coincidence. Xiao Hua touched his head and said very embarrassedly, I just finished using my Chenkuan bag. Hey, little friend Duanmu is not honest. The ghost judge slightly smiled. The chain outside the mysterious dark cloud of Xiao Hua suddenly tightened. An indescribable pain came, causing Xiao Hua to be unable to help but cry out. Official, please spare me. Xiao Hua hastily begged for mercy. I just remembered, I just finished using my Chenkuan bag. I just happen to have a small Chenkuan bag, please wait a moment. Saying this, Xiao Hua hastily took out a Chenkuan bag from his bosom and handed it over to the ghost judge. That willow branch is inside, do you want to take a look first? Now that's a good child. The ghost judge said with a smile. The black mist on his ferocious face was boiling. Official, can you loosen this chain a bit? Xiao Hua stretched out his hand and then retracted it, begging, moreover, if I give the willow branch to official, and official doesn't let me go, what should I do? Hehe, you humans have a saying, humans are meat on the chopping block, I'm meat on the chopping block. Little friend Duanmu, do you think you have a choice? The ghost judge laughed coldly. But Xiao Hua was still hesitant. The Chenkuan bag in his hand expanded and contracted a few times, as if there really was a willow branch in the bag. The ghost judge was not in a hurry, only coldly looking at Xiao Hua. When Xiao Hua opened his mouth again, he said, I feel that something is wrong. It's not that I don't believe in official, but this so-called parameter is my last resort. There is no if or if. The ghost judge said coldly, I bet that you don't know what this parameter is. Otherwise, you definitely wouldn't casually use it here. I don't know how you can use this parameter, but I can be sure that if this item is in your hands, sooner or later you will die because of it. In other words, if you don't give this item to me, you will soon fall into my soul hooking pen. Official, can you dispel my doubts? Xiao Hua's face revealed a shocked expression. Hehe, this parameter is no longer little friend's. Little friend doesn't need to inquire anymore. The ghost judge said with a smile, if you can cultivate to the literary star realm, perhaps you can obtain some information about this item. Ah! A pained expression immediately appeared on Xiao Hua's face. However, immediately after, Xiao Hua screamed again. He hurriedly waved his hand and the Chenkuan bag flew towards the ghost judge. Sir, spare me, mph. The ghost judge stared at Xiao Hua's hands and coldly snorted. He calmly waited for the Chenkuan bag to fly closer. That perfectly straight chain connected to the black fog slightly trembled, as if there was any abnormal movement, the chain could be activated at any time. What's special is that around Xiao Hua's surroundings, strands of black fog faintly appeared, as if the entire domain's attention was focused on this place. Xiao Hua's hands were placed in front of him, not daring to move. His eyes were also looking at the Chenkuan bag. When the Chenkuan bag neared the ghost judge, a large hand stretched out from the black fog and pulled the Chenkuan bag into the black fog. Only then did the tense atmosphere in the entire domain slightly relaxed. Official. Xiao Hua still didn't dare to move and opened his mouth. However, just as Xiao Hua said those two words, without waiting for the ghost judge to reply, the sound of wind flashed in his right hand and parameter suddenly appeared. At the same time parameter appeared, Xiao Hua's right hand suddenly waved. A 10-colored rainbow broke through all the restrictions of the domain and hit the ghost judge's black fog in the blink of an eye. Ah! A blood-curdling scream, followed by a zzzzzz. A strong impact sound. Outside the black fog formed by the ghost judge, the underworld official's robe emitted a black lightning-like light. The entire official's robe turned into several strands of ashes and slowly fell down. In the ashes, the black fog flashed and disappeared. The rainbow bridge actually missed. This is bad. Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. His heavenly vision hastily looked around. The parameter in his hand wanted to chase and attack again. However, he raised his hand again and again. This time, he was really exhausted. That willow branch didn't even move a bit. Damn it, damn it, damn it. The black shadow swayed again and angrily cursed. It was unknown where it came from, but it was still coiled in the air. However, at this time, the black fog was once again reduced by 30%. The rainbow bridge from before was admittedly missed because of the ghost judge's teleportation. However, just by the rainbow bridge passing through the domain, 30% of the black fog was already wiped out. If Xiao Hua could use the rainbow bridge to hit the black fog, he would probably be able to kill the ghost judge. Damn it! Xiao Hua muttered at the same time as the ghost magistrate. He was a little regretful. If he had used the parameter for the last time when the 3 saints of literature were suppressing the ghost, he might have been able to kill it. Pu. After the ghost judge angrily cursed, an incomparably sharp gold chi suddenly appeared somewhere in the black fog. Like a sharp sword, it madly rushed towards Xiao Hua. Seeing this incomparably pure gold chi directly stabbing into his heart, Xiao Hua understood that the ghost judge had already given birth to a killing intent. He hurriedly released his divine sense to retrieve the willow branch. At the same time, he used the ethereal steps and his figure rapidly flash. Boom! The gold chi slightly tilted and hit Xiao Hua's left shoulder. As soon as the gold chi entered Xiao Hua's body, a large hole was actually pierced through by this gold chi. Ah! Xiao Hua was greatly shocked. Not only was it because of the sharp pain on his left shoulder, but more importantly, it was because he sensed a dense aura of heaven-earth origin chi from this gold chi. This ghost can also control heaven-earth origin chi? However, he didn't have time to think too much. The chain floating in the air rapidly shook and turned into a poisonous snake that pounced towards his mysterious dark cloud. The chain that was originally entwined with the dark cloud turned into a sawtooth shape and pounced towards Xiao Hua's soul, wanting to tear it into pieces in an instant. -13. Chapter 3859. Roar. Xiao Hua endured the pain, roared, and shouted, "Where is Confucian fellow Daoist? Fellow Daoist, don't panic, I am here." 4-colored true chi gushed out from the top of Xiao Hua's head. Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua flew out on his sword, promised, and waved the imperial star stab in his hand. A stream of light flashed in the air, stirring up 10,000 layers of vast chi waves, and immediately pierced into the black fog. Hiss! Hearing that the ghost judge was in pain, Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua didn't hesitate. He opened his mouth, and the 5 chi thunder flew out, about to hit the ghost judge. Unfortunately, before the 5 chi righteous thunder could descend, the black gas within the domain flashed, and all of the lightning completely disappeared. Even the vast airwaves brought about by the star control spike also disappeared. When Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua made his move, Xiao Hua formed a seal with both hands, and the power of mountains fell towards the ghost judge. Buddhist seal? The ghost judge was slightly taken aback. Black gas flashed within the domain once again. However, although the black gas was tumbling, the Buddhist seal was still unable to be completely wiped out. 70% of the mountain's power still landed on the ghost judge. Swish! In the black fog, the strange golden chi rushed out again. Boom! With a loud sound, the power of mountains was split open. Of course, some of the Buddhist light in the power of mountains still fell on the ghost judge's body, and as if it was scalded by boiling water, the ghost judge's black fog tumbled violently, as if it was heavily injured. What a pity! Seeing this, Xiao Hua sighed in his heart. If Buddha Subhuti was here, it would be a lot easier. It seems that at the last moment, I still have to wake Buddha Subhuti up. Looking at the ghost judge again, he saw that Xiao Hua actually knew Buddhist techniques. Although he didn't suffer any serious injuries, he still couldn't help but become angry, and shouted, "Damn it, damn it, damn it. Duanmu Liangsheng, since you want to die, this official will help you. Although it's a bit troublesome to get the parameter from your corpse, but what's going on?" Not waiting for the ghost judge to finish speaking, the chain that was still in the air suddenly trembled, almost breaking out of his control. Without hesitation, the ghost judge controlled the black fog to fall on the chains. Then, several golden lights once again rushed out from the black fog, separately piercing into Xiao Hua's golden body. Under this attack, Xiao Hua's body was once again torn open with several wounds. Although the ghost judge, and the ghost weapon, the heavenly tus, and the earth, the heavenly roar. The little white dragon roared in anger, but no matter how he struggled, he couldn't break free from the ghost judge's control. The ghost judge's was the ghost judge's and soul cultivator Xiao Hua's nemesis. Puff puff. Soul cultivator Xiao Hua couldn't break free of this shackles, but with a push of his hands, the shaman codex fell below him. Countless green seal characters rushed up from the shaman codex, and soul cultivator Xiao Hua's body suddenly exploded, turning into fist-sized green seal characters. These green seal characters let out an earth-shattering sound, like a giant moving a mountain, or a giant chasing the sun. Peng peng peng. Amidst this sound, the underworld fruit that had fallen into the dark cloud earlier suddenly flew out and fell into the green seal characters. Woo woo. Like a river overturning the sea, an illusion of the underworld fruit unexpectedly appeared in the dark cloud. Xiao Hua clenched his teeth and held on. The golden light pierced his body full of holes, and the chains were about to tear his soul apart. But at this moment, the soul cultivator Xiao Hua's movement gave him a stroke of luck. Scholar Xiao Hua had fallen into the bottleneck of the heavenly heart realm, and couldn't enter the heavenly soul realm for a long time. He couldn't step into the heavenly soul realm from the soul warrior realm, so Xiao Hua had always felt that he was missing an opportunity. But when he saw the illusion of the underworld fruit, and then thought of the underworld fruit's help to soul cultivator, and the ghost judge's method of attacking souls, how could Xiao Hua not understand that if he wanted to enter the heavenly soul realm with his soul cultivation method, he would have to rely on the netherworld chi or the blood sea water? Xiao Hua understood, and so did the soul cultivator Xiao Hua. The two characters Netherworld and Netherworld flew out from the Magus Codex, and fell into the green seal characters that Xiao Hua had transformed into. Two earth-shattering sounds resonated in the entire mysterious dark cloud. Along with these sounds, the soul cultivator Xiao Hua's body slowly came out again. At the same time, Xiao Hua's spirit seized this opportunity to draw the blood sea water from the yin side of the space. He wanted to communicate with the netherworld blue sky in the mysterious dark cloud. But before he could draw the blood sea water from the yin side of the space, Xiao Hua opened his mouth, and the blood sea water fell into his body out of thin air. The sea of blood rushed into soul cultivator Xiao Hua's body. Soul cultivator Xiao Hua's body flickered continuously, and the invisible barrier that was blocking the sky of heart suddenly disappeared. A powerful suction force was generated from the sky of soul formation, forcibly pulling soul cultivator Xiao Hua into the sky of soul formation. When Xiao Hua entered the heavenly soul realm, the two characters Netherworld and Netherworld immediately flashed with green light, and an indescribable wave was generated from the yin side of the space, and fell into Xiao Hua's hand. As Xiao Hua's hands danced, his body flashed and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already outside the mysterious dark cloud. Soul cultivator Xiao Hua came out of the mysterious dark cloud. Without saying anything, he waved his hands, and grabbed the chain that he didn't even dare to touch before. Immediately, a tremendous force was transmitted from his hands, and the chain shook violently. Not only did the saw teeth disappear, the chain also gradually turned into a belt, and fell towards Xiao Hua's hand. The ghost judge sensed the tremendous force transmitted from the soul-capturing chain, and couldn't help but be shocked. This is the Netherworld's origin power? How can you have the Netherworld's origin power? Not only this. Today, this young master will show you the power of my Duanmu family. Xiao Hua's soul was almost scattered, but he still remembered to frame Duanmu Liangsheng. When his malevolent face appeared, he shouted loudly, "Suppress! Wu!" But inside the dark domain, a vast and unparalleled qi rushed out from Xiao Hua's mouth, and 6 cauldron-like objects flew out with the power to suppress everything. 9 cauldrons! The ghost judge was completely dumbfounded. He almost didn't think, and even abandoned the soul-capturing chain. The black fog flashed, and he teleported into the light hole. "Kaka, at this time, you still want to escape from my Duanmu family?" The green-robed Xiao Hua's voice came from who knows where, and a layer of 2-colored spirit fire spread out in a net in front of the light hole. "You!" The ghost judge was shocked by the green-robed Xiao Hua. He didn't think that there would be an invisible thing in his domain that he didn't know about. However, there was no time for him to think too much at this moment. Xiao Hua used all of his methods. Just this spiritual fire touched his black fog, and the black fog quickly melted away, scaring the ghost magistrate into spitting out several streams of golden qi in succession to extinguish this spiritual fire. But just as he was about to use the golden qi to extinguish the spirit fire, wong wong. With a rumbling sound, the 6 cauldrons released a suppressive power that the ghost judge couldn't resist, and firmly trapped him in the air. 9 cauldrons shake fate, 6 cauldrons calm the world. Xiao Hua said coldly, "A ghost dares to slander my Duanmu family, you really deserve to die." "You, when did your Duanmu family have 6 cauldrons?" The ghost judge could no longer form a ghost, and could only turn into black fog and float in the air. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes as he watched the 6 cauldrons release an overwhelming aura to suppress the ghost, and his heart finally relaxed. Although he didn't know how to use the 6 cauldrons, he was used to using the innate divine restriction, and controlling the 6 cauldrons to form a suppressive force wasn't difficult. Looking at the ugly state of the ghost, he laughed coldly and said, "Zhu Zi, Zheng Zi, and Zun Zi, the 3 saints' wooden statues could suppress you. My Duanmu family's 6 cauldrons can naturally suppress you. I still need to use these 6 cauldrons to refine you." Ha ha! The ghost judge didn't know if he was bluffing or had other tricks up his sleeve, but he laughed loudly and said, "Duanmu Liangsheng, you really overestimate yourself. If this official wasn't injured by the 3 saints, if this official wasn't ambushed by your parameter, even if you used these 6 cauldrons, you still wouldn't be able to suppress this official. As for refining this official, don't worry about it. This official should have cultivated to the point of turning from yin to yang. Other than your parameter, it's impossible for you to kill this official." Full tilde of course, Xiao Hua didn't know how to use the 6 cauldrons to refine the ghost, but he laughed coldly. Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua's 5 qi righteous thunder fell and hit the ghost judge's body. Sure enough, within the black fog, there was a faint golden light flashing, and the black fog didn't seem to reduce as it rolled. Ha ha! The ghost judge laughed coldly, and golden aura flew out from the rolling black fog. Not only did it rush into the 5 qi righteous thunder, it even hit the 6 cauldrons. The 5 qi righteous thunder was actually scattered, and the 6 cauldrons were hit to the point that they were on the verge of collapsing. However, fortunately, the 6 cauldrons weren't comparable to the 3 saints' wooden statues, and after a series of loud sounds, they didn't suffer any damage. What's more, what was suppressing the ghost judge was the fortune and overwhelming aura of the 6 cauldrons. These things weren't something that the golden aura could defeat, so although Xiao Hua was in a sorry state, the ghost judge couldn't escape from the suppression. "It's hard to use parameter now, perhaps I can only wait until daybreak?" Xiao Hua bit his lips, looking at the somewhat scattered 6 cauldrons and the complacent black fog, and secretly pondered, "Perhaps I can only use the demonic blade. Perhaps I can let Buddha Subhuti come out of seclusion? Damn it! What exactly is the golden aura inside the ghost judge's body?" Xiao Hua naturally knew that the demonic blade would damage his mind, so he wouldn't use it easily, and Buddha Subhuti's seclusion was also extremely crucial, but now that things had come to this, he had no other choice. Thinking, the demonic aura on Xiao Hua's left arm slightly swelled. Roar! At this time, the roar of a wandering ghost came from afar, causing Xiao Hua's heart to move, and his gaze fell on the faint fog below the 6 cauldrons. Collect! Xiao Hua's eyes slightly narrowed, and his mind felt as if a pair of large hands were falling on the ghost judge. The novel The Story of the Cultivation God will have even more fresh content on the official WeChat platform, and at the same time, there will be a 100% lottery gift for everyone. Open WeChat now, click on the plus sign at the top right to add friend, search for the public account Qdred and follow it, hurry up. -13. Chapter 3860. Ha 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 ha. Duanmu Liangsheng, this official really admires you. You are really indulging in fantasy. The ghost judge mocks. Although this official is a ghost, this official is not something that a Confucian cultivator like you can capture. Ayo, not good, this. The ghost judge is naturally not like those ownerless wandering souls. As long as he struggles, Xiao Hua's mind will not easily capture him into the yin side of the space, not to mention that this ghost judge's strength far surpasses Xiao Hua's. However, contrary to the judge of ghost and Xiao Hua's expectations, wherever Xiao Hua's mind passed, the judge of ghost's fog, which had not moved in the slightest, as steady as a boulder, began to slowly move towards Xiao Hua. Although the fog was struggling with all its might, it was as if there was a string pulling it, and it began to move faster and faster. Wrong. Xiao Hua suddenly feels that the fog's movement is not being pulled by his mind. Instead, he feels that the fog is taking the initiative to rush into his space. In an instant, Xiao Hua's heart is startled. This is not the ghost judge's scheme. Thinking of this, how can Xiao Hua still dare to capture this fog? He hastily retreats, preparing to dodge. But in the blink of an eye, the ghost judge suddenly accelerates, not allowing Xiao Hua to withdraw his mind, and like lightning, rushes into Xiao Hua's space. Ah! Xiao Hua is greatly alarmed. His body is already riddled with scars, and now his heart is as cold as ice. Ah! The ghost judge also lets out a heart-wrenching scream, looking even more desperate than Xiao Hua. The instant the black fog rushed into Xiao Hua's body, Xiao Hua's heart truly died like ashes. After scheming for so long, he still fell into the scheme of the ghost judge. However, he still wanted to fight to the death. He desperately pulled the black fog and flew towards his own space. He understood very well that as long as he fell into his space, any ghost or judge would be at his mercy. However, Xiao Hua didn't think that the ghost judge would give him this opportunity. However, the strange thing was that the black fog didn't resist at all. Under the tremendous force of his mind, the black fog immediately crashed into the yin side of Xiao Hua's space. What made Jade Archive Xiao Hua even more shocked was that the moment the black fog fell into the yin side of the space, a formless golden dot fell out of the black fog. The black fog was like a piece of clothing. After stripping it off, Xiao Hua could see its curvaceous body. An extremely familiar feeling came from that golden point. Gold. Gold origin. Xiao Hua suddenly realized. Without any hesitation, he immediately used the Big Dipper God Fist in midair. The metal origin changed direction and rushed into Xiao Hua's bones. After the bones were tempered, there were naturally meridians, spiritual fire, and so on. Xiao Hua was in pain, but he was also enjoying the joy of advancing. The metal origin the thing that Xiao Hua yearned for even in his dreams. Now, it actually appeared in the clone of an underworld judge. It really made Xiao Hua surprised, very surprised. However, when the metal origin rushed into the space, waves of origin fluctuations spread throughout the entire space. Waves of mountain roars and tsunami waves were produced in the space. Layers of starry sky rippled in Xiao Hua's heart. Xiao Hua already understood the ins and outs of the matter. This metal origin was the origin of the world. Even the ghosts of the underworld should be able to use it. Therefore, when the clone of the underworld judge came out of the underworld, it was discovered by Zhu Zi, Zheng Zi, and Zun Zi for some unknown reason. The three literary sages naturally didn't allow the ghosts of the underworld to harass the hidden immortal continent. Therefore, a battle broke out. In the end, although the three literary sages suppressed the ghost, they couldn't completely eliminate it. In the end, the three literary sages could only leave behind wooden statues and wills, and even their own children to complete the heavy task of suppressing the ghosts. Of course, when the wills of the three literary sages joined hands, they were able to eliminate 70% of the underworld judge's ghost. The reason why they couldn't completely eliminate the ghost back then was definitely because of the metal origin. However, today, the ghost's body gradually formed and it also had some success in refining the metal origin. It was preparing to break out of the restriction when the heavenly dog eclipse of the moon was at its densest. Of course, this ghost's plan was extremely successful. The ghost formation of the 9 underworlds origin drove the netherworld chi and wandering souls to destroy the underworld judge's body. The metal origin of the fire origin destroyed the wooden statues and wills of the 3 literary sages. If the underworld judge could stop at this moment and return in time, Xiao Hua definitely wouldn't have stopped it. In fact, Xiao Hua wouldn't have been able to stop it. However, the underworld judge's greed didn't change. After obtaining the metal origin, it still coveted the parameter. It didn't care that it only had 30% of its strength left and wanted to use its domain and ghost tool to obtain the parameter. However, it just so happened that it encountered Xiao Hua, a Daoist cultivator who wasn't a Confucian cultivator like Duanmu Liangsheng. It absolutely couldn't imagine how complex and profound Xiao Hua's knowledge was. It also didn't think that Xiao Hua would have a space that others definitely wouldn't have. Of course, what the underworld judge didn't expect the most was that Xiao Hua's space already had the fire origin and earth origin. Under the influence of the 2 origin powers, the metal origin in its body was no longer under its control. It took the initiative to enter Xiao Hua's space. By the time it realized that something was wrong, it was already unable to escape its fate. At this time, it was already unable to separate the metal origin from its body. It was said that success was due to Xiao He and defeat was due to Xiao He. It was nothing more than this. It was destroyed by the metal origin that it obtained and involuntarily fell into the yin side of Xiao Hua's space. Even if its strength was exceedingly high, once it fell into the yin side of the space, wasn't it still up to Xiao Hua's words? After an unknown amount of time, Xiao Hua collected the metal origin. After thinking through all the causes and effects, he couldn't help but sigh inwardly. However, at this time, he couldn't afford to slack off. Just as he was fighting a life and death battle with the underworld judge, the 9 ghost caves were still erupting endlessly. There was still an endless stream of wandering souls rushing out. However, there was a faint outline of the pitch-black blood moon in the night sky. The lunar eclipse seemed to be coming to an end. Let the test come a little more fiercely. Xiao Hua laughed loudly and unconsciously raised his head to let out a long roar. The wounds that were pierced by the metal origin were previously difficult to heal. However, after Xiao Hua used the metal origin to temper his body, these wounds had already healed. Xiao Hua had gotten rid of the great enemy in his heart, and his entire body was relaxed. He raised his eyes to look at the outline of the blood moon and released his consciousness. Now that he had the underworld's yuan qi in his mind, it was even easier to collect the netherworld qi and wandering souls that were spewing out. The ghost qi that was spewing out from the 9 ghost caves, the wandering souls that surged out, and even the stranger things that came later, didn't even touch the ground before they were immediately collected by Xiao Hua into the yin side of the space. They didn't cause any damage to Wuyuan County, Jingyu County, and Fancheng County. After a long time, the blood-red moonlight gradually appeared, and the yang qi overflowed again. Xiao Hua's body could feel the obvious Tai Yin qi, and among the 9 ghost caves, 3 of them glowed with Buddha light and Aaron qi. Gradually, the qi of the netherworld was retracted, and the wandering souls started to decrease. Another hour passed, and the sky suddenly became pitch black. This darkness was not as dark as the underworld judges, but the temperature of the night sky didn't drop. Xiao Hua understood that this was the darkness before dawn. The night of the 15th of July finally passed. The wandering souls no longer appeared, and the other 6 ghost caves no longer spewed out netherworld qi. Even if the 3 ghost caves still had some ghost qi, it was nothing under the yang qi. Fellow Daoist green robe. Xiao Hua was really tired. He collected his consciousness and flew down to the undulating mountain range below him. He raised his voice and asked, Wuyuan County, Jingyu County, and Fancheng County can be put away. I wonder how the lives of the millions of villagers in these 3 towns are. Green-robed Xiao Hua didn't answer, but in the night sky, rays of light appeared one after another, and layers of formations rippled. After a few moments, green-robed Xiao Hua landed beside Xiao Hua with the Kunlun mirror in his hand. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and looked at the town in the dark night. At this time, the town was so quiet, and there wasn't a trace of sound. The candles that could be seen at night, at this time, it was an extravagant hope. Fellow Daoist. Green-robe Xiao Hua said in a low voice, if I guessed correctly, more than 300,000 villagers died. Those souls were sucked into your space along with the netherworld energy. Hiss, more than 300,000? Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of cold air and said involuntarily, how could there be so many? There aren't many left. Green-robe Xiao Hua sighed, Wuyuan County, Jingyu County, and Fancheng County, these 3 towns have about 1 million people. These people are just like what Xu Cheng said, they are already on the verge of death. Even if tonight's 100 Ghost Parade didn't happen, I'm afraid they wouldn't be able to live for long. Moreover, the ghost that appeared tonight is the underworld's judge. This guy's death chi is really powerful. Once a mortal comes into contact with this death chi, their soul will immediately leave their body. This is also because fellow Daoist asked I to set up a large array in these towns in advance. If it wasn't for this array, not to mention 300,000 people, even 1 million people wouldn't be able to escape tonight's massacre. Coo coo coo. All of a sudden, the lonely sound of a rooster crowing rang out from nowhere, breaking the silence of the night. This sound was exceptionally loud in the night sky, and at the same time, it was exceptionally warm. I bet. Green-robe Xiao Hua said with a smile, this rooster won't live past today. If someone eats him, then it's good. Xiao Hua said meaningfully, just like you and me, even if we have to sacrifice some, it will be worth it if we can save some people. Fine, fine, the one who will be sacrificed is not you. Green-robe Xiao Hua waved his hand that Xiao Hua couldn't see and said, quickly let I go back, there are a lot of disciples waiting at home. Hihi, I'll have to trouble fellow Daoist. Xiao Hua smiled and stored the formless nascent soul into his lower dantian. These several 100,000 merit points have already landed on fellow Daoist's head. That's right, fellow Daoist. The light hole that the ghost judge came out of disappeared after fellow Daoist collected that guy. Since the 3 literary sages' wooden statues fell inside, I'm afraid there's something fishy about it. Green-robe Xiao Hua, who was as greedy as Xiao Hua, didn't forget to tell Xiao Hua before entering the space. The novel The Story of the Cultivation God will have more fresh content on the official WeChat platform. At the same time, there's also a 100% chance of a lottery gift for everyone. Open WeChat now, click on the plus sign at the top right to add friend, search for the public account Qdred and follow, hurry up. -13. Chapter 3861. How could Xiao Hua not know what the green-robed Xiao Hua was thinking, so he laughed and said, rest assured, green-robed fellow Daoist, even if you didn't say it, the scholarly fellow Daoist would be worried. That wooden statue had the will of the literary sage, so it should contain the secrets of the scholarly cultivators. Moreover, Sage Zhuxi's message clearly stated that the wooden statue of the ancestral shrine is of the Xiantian realm, and the clan records are of the later generations. The ancestral shrines of the Zhu, Zheng, and Zun families have long disappeared. If I'm not mistaken, they should be in this light cave. Alas, suppressing the underworld's magistrate in the ancestral shrine, this is really unimaginable. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, how could I believe it? Xiao Hua smiled and landed on the ground. This was a dilapidated temple. The previous battle had already torn down this small temple beyond recognition, leaving only rubble at the foot of the mountain. Xiao Hua's divine sense swept over and his brows unconsciously wrinkled because there was no trace of the ancestral shrine in his divine sense. The light cave from before had disappeared without a trace, as if it didn't exist at all. What do you think, fellow Daoist? Xiao Hua released the scholarly cultivator Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua sensed for a moment and shook his head. Previously, there was a strong righteous qi on the wooden statue, but now I can't sense it at all. I'm afraid the 3 literary sages did something. Yes, there must be a restriction. Xiao Hua nodded. Otherwise, it would be impossible to suppress the ghost, and it would be impossible to hide from those who persecuted the Zhu, Zheng, and Zun family. Since there is a restriction, it should be related to the Buddhist sect. Xiao Hua smiled and said, "I'll entrust my happiness to you, fellow Daoist." After saying that, Xiao Hua returned to his middle dantian. Xiao Hua used the Heaven's Eye again and used the escape technique to escape underground. Knowing that the ancestral shrines of the three families were definitely here, Xiao Hua carefully searched the area. Even though he had the Heaven's Eye ability, it still took him the time to eat a meal before he found a strange little dot in the depths of the ground, as if he was looking for a needle in a haystack. There was a tiny bit of psyche power and a wisp of noble spirit on it, but it was really insignificant in the underground. Seeing such a small dot, Xiao Hua understood that this was the Shumi Buddhist formation of the Buddhist sect. He pinched his chin and looked at the motionless dot that didn't even flicker with a faint radiance. He thought to himself, with my cultivation base, breaking this Shumi Buddhist formation isn't too difficult. However, the problem was that if he was not careful, he might destroy the ancestral hall inside. This was disrespect to Zhu Zi, Zheng Zi, and Zun Zi, the three sages of literature. Moreover, how could the Buddhist formation that the three sages of literature had set up together to suppress the ghostly magistrate be so easy to break? The chances of being careless were higher. If I want to obtain the true heavenly book insight, I'm afraid I can't be so reckless. The ancestral tree is like the innate qi, and the family tree is made of silk and silk. The first sentence clearly meant that there was Yantian true qi in the wooden statue of the ancestral shrine. However, this Yantian true qi, what was the use of it? Did it have anything to do with the heavenly book? Could it be that the true enlightenment of the heavenly books was this innate true qi? As for the second sentence, did it mean that there was silk and silk hidden in the family tree? The silk and silk contained the family tree of the younger generation? Silk and silk. Family tree? Or perhaps. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua's eyes suddenly lit up. Almost in disbelief, he took out the book that he had obtained from the old woman of the Zhu family in Jinghua City from the space. This book was originally made of silk and it corresponded to the so-called family tree silk and silk. However, there was no family tree written in it. When the book made of silk and silk was taken out of the space, it immediately flashed with a faint Buddhist light. Similarly, the small dot also flashed with the same rhythm of Buddhist light. They attracted each other and the silk and silk flew towards the small dot. Great! Xiao Hua clapped his hands and praised from the bottom of his heart, immortal grass with others, leaving fragrance in my hand. At that time, my cultivation base was low and I didn't think about the heavenly book insight. However, because of a moment of kindness, I broke the curse of the old woman of the Zhu family and obtained this silk and silk. I really didn't expect that I would be able to use it today, and after so many years, the family of the old woman of the Zhu family in Jinghua City should have already turned into yellow soil. Just when Xiao Hua's heart was filled with joy, the book gradually unfolded and turned into a cloud-like silk and covered the small dot. However, after covering it, no matter if it was the silk or the dot, there was no movement at all. No, it seems that something else is missing. Xiao Hua looked at everything in front of him and secretly calculated in his heart. Yes, this is silk and silk. There should be a family tree, and even, there should be descendants. Xiao Hua smiled and said, "It seems that the task of opening the ancestral shrine will fall on the heads of Zhu Cheng and the other Confucian family descendant." Thinking of this, Xiao Hua stretched out his hand and collected the silk and turned it into the book again and put it into the space. Then, he escaped from the ground and rushed into the air. At this time, dawn was breaking in the east and a fresh breath filled the entire sky. Although there was no trace of green beyond the three towns, the faint vitality after the wind and rain was already in sight. Cough, cough. This was the sound of the old woman coughing weakly in the morning. Creak. This was the sound of the woman gently pushing open the wooden door. Although this sound was accompanied by the woman's slight sigh and even grief, it was still the sound of life. Woo-woo. Even more were the sounds of people crying after discovering that their family members had died. The grief of the living was the remembrance of the dead. There were also many sounds that were born at dawn. These sounds fell into Xiao Hua's ears one by one. Among them, there was joy, sorrow, worry, and worry. No matter what kind of emotion the sound was, it made Xiao Hua feel a sense of joy. It made him feel that last night's life and death battle was worth it, that last night's life and death situation was meaningful. When Xiao Hua's figure flew to the sky above Zhujiao village, under the bright sunlight, Zhujiao village was actually a field of silence. Not even a single person's shadow could be seen. Xiao Hua's soul sense swept over and immediately understood. As the saying goes, the ignorant are fearless. The people in the 3 towns didn't know what happened. They didn't know that last night they had already experienced a life and death situation that they had never seen before. Therefore, they woke up early in the morning as usual and prepared to find food to eat. They prepared to struggle through the next day. Everyone in Zhujiao village knew of the dangers of the night, so no one dared to rashly come out. Zhujiao village's restriction was still open as they quietly waited for Xiao Hua's message. Dang dang dang. Xiao Hua's mood was extremely good. He laughed and asked loudly. Confucius said, "A friend from afar is coming, isn't it also good?" Xiao. Daoist Xiao? You've returned. An unusually surprised voice came from within Zhujiao village. Immediately after, a young man stepped on a cloud and rushed into the air. Zhu Xiong. Seeing this young man's appearance, Xiao Hua was slightly stunned. However, in an instant, Xiao Hua understood something. He cupped his hands and said, "Congratulations, fellow Daoist Zhu." This person was naturally Zhu Cheng, who had already taken the rejuvenation pill. He looked extremely similar to the dead Zhu Xiong. Seeing Xiao Hua cupped his hands, Zhu Cheng hurriedly bowed in return and said, "Ari, this one still has to thank Benefactor. If it wasn't for Benefactor, how could this one be like this?" Daoist Xiao. While speaking, the group of Zhujiao village disciples all flew into the air and followed behind Zhu Cheng. They bowed and said, "Many thanks to Benefactor for saving our Zhujiao village disciples again. No need to thank me, no need to thank me." Xiao Hua helped everyone up and was about to speak again when he suddenly felt that something was wrong. When he looked at everyone, he saw that everyone's eyes were filled with a kind of burning desire. Xiao Hua immediately understood. He hurriedly waved his hands and said, "Fellow Taoists, the rejuvenation pill that this one gave to fellow Daoist Zhu was something this one obtained by chance during an auction. This one also thought that it was a simple pill and didn't pay much attention to it. Who would have thought that? Fellow Daoist Zhu would actually become so young. This is really unexpected." That's right, it was really unexpected. This was the inner voice of all the Zhujiao village disciples. In just one night, all the Zhujiao village disciples saw with their own eyes the head of the Zhujiao village, who was on the verge of death, turn from old to young bit by bit. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, they would definitely think that Zhu Cheng was Zhu Xiong reborn. Xiao Hua's words were obviously perfunctory. At least he didn't show that kind of unexpected surprise. Obviously, he knew the effects of this rejuvenation pill. However, since Xiao Hua didn't say anything, everyone couldn't say anything either. They could only stand up with some regret. "Benefactor," Zhu Cheng said in a low voice, "how is it? Everything is already in the past." Xiao Hua said with a smile, "Moreover, your Zhu family, Zeng family, and Zun family don't need to guard the ghost cave anymore." "Ah, really?" Zhu Cheng was overjoyed. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and replied cautiously, "This one thinks so, but this one can't guarantee it. If it's possible, you 3 families should guard this place for a period of time. Of course, this one thinks that there's no need to use your life to strengthen the seal." That's good. That's good. Zhu Cheng immediately thought of Zhu Xiong and couldn't help but shed tears. After a moment, Zhu Cheng came to his senses and hurriedly said with a smile, "Benefactor, please come with me. This one doesn't know how to thank you." Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, "The great calamity has just passed. Within the 3 towns, more than 300,000 people died. If the remaining people don't have food to fill their stomachs, they might not be able to survive tonight. Although Fengxiong country has food for disaster relief, it might not be able to come in the next few days. Fellow immortal Zhu, disaster relief is the most important thing today." Yes, this one understands," Zhu Cheng hurriedly said, This one has already arranged everything last night. My Zhu family has a very good relationship with the government of the 3 towns. This one will send Zhu family disciples to Jingyu County and Fanchang County. This one will personally go to Wuyuan County. If Benefactor has time, you might as well go with this one. This time, this one will definitely spread Benefactor's name everywhere. That's not appropriate. Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand and said, this one is a Dao sect cultivator. If my reputation is too great, it will definitely attract the attention of the Immortal Palace, so it's like this. Zhu Cheng thought for a moment and said with a smile, Benefactor, you're thinking too much. Benefactor, at this time, not only should you not hide your cultivation and merit, you should also expand your reputation. Especially this kind of merit of saving people, it should be even more publicized. The novel The Legend of the Cultivation God will have more fresh content on the official WeChat platform. At the same time, there will be a 100% chance of drawing a big prize for everyone. Now open WeChat, click the plus sign at the top right to add friend, search for the public account Qdred and follow it. Hurry up. -13. Chapter 3862. Ah! Why is that? Xiao Hua was stunned. He had always been careful in doing things. Even if he did something good, he didn't dare to leave his name because he didn't want to attract the attention of the Immortal Palace. Even now, after the Immortal Palace had conquered the Black Wind Ridge, he still wanted to hide his cultivation. But he never thought that this Zhu Cheng would actually advise him to show his strength and not to hide it. However, Zhu Cheng is the descendant of Zhu Zi and the head of a scholarly family. His vision must be higher than others. Since he said so, there must be some truth to it. Xiao Hua really wanted to hear it. He. Zhu Cheng said with a smile, Benefactor, please wait a moment. I will tell you in detail after I send the disaster relief people out. Xiao Hua nodded. In addition, you don't need to go to Wuyuan County. Let someone else go. This Xiao and you have another important thing to do. Okay, this one understands. Zhu Cheng didn't have any objection to Xiao Hua's assignment. After sending the people to bring the food, he said with a smile, Benefactor, what's the matter? Does your Zhu family have a genealogy? Xiao Hua asked. Of course. Zhu Cheng nodded. Every family has a genealogy. Although my Zhu family has declined, this genealogy has never been lost. Okay, you go and get it. Then follow this one to find Zheng and Zun Qing. Xiao Hua urged. Zhu Cheng was a bit confused, but he didn't ask and flew into the Zhu family village. After a while, Zhu Cheng came back with a red booklet and respectfully handed it to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua took it and roughly looked at it. He saw that this genealogy was written by Zhu Zi. Inside were the names of the Zhu family's children. Zhu Cheng and Zhu Xiong's names were on the last page, and the last one was Zhu Hua. He should be the youngest son of Zhu Cheng. Take it first and follow this one to find Zun Qing and Zheng, Xiao Hua said as he returned the genealogy to Zhu Cheng. Zhu Cheng took it and carefully put it away, nodding, Benefactor, please. Zhu Cheng flew forward while Xiao Hua followed behind him. A moment later, Xiao Hua asked, Fellow Daoist Zhu, earlier you said that I shouldn't conceal my cultivation level. Why is that? Don't tell me you don't know that the Immortal Palace will use some methods to suppress our Daoist cultivators when their cultivation reaches a certain level. Benefactor, have you heard of the Buddhist sect? Zhu Cheng asked with a smile. Xiao Hua nodded and said, Of course I know. However, the Buddhist sect has the Great Thunderclap Temple in the Western Paradise. Our Dao sect doesn't have such a strong backing. What about the Longevity Town in Yu Province? Zhu Cheng said with a smile, It said that the Buddhism sect is going to build a 99 feet tall golden body of Guanyin Bodhisattva there. This is something that the Immortal Palace can't tolerate. Similarly, the Big Lei-Yin Temple can't interfere. Why is the golden body already there? Even the Immortal Palace doesn't dare to easily topple it. Naturally, Xiao Hua also knew about this matter. With Zhu Cheng's reminder, Xiao Hua immediately came to a realization. What fellow Immortal Zhu said, is what the people's hearts desire. That's right. We Confucian cultivators have always emphasized the hearts of the people and the will of the people. To put it bluntly, the noble spirit is also the human aura that has been deposited in the world. All Confucian cultivators who want to cultivate to the great Confucian realm of the fifth stage of essence energy have to experience the world of mortals. They have to comprehend the origin and application of the noble spirit in the world of mortals. Therefore, Confucian cultivators know the importance of the hearts of the people the most. Zhu Cheng nodded and said, the Buddhist sect didn't invest a single Buddhist cultivator in the longevity town. They only relied on the piety of countless good men and women to build a 99 feet tall golden body of Guanyin Bodhisattva. Isn't it because the immortal palace has misgivings about the hearts of the good men and women in the hidden immortal continent? Benefactor is admittedly a Tao sect cultivator, but if you have accumulated a lot of merits and millions, tens of millions of ordinary people are deeply grateful to you, do you think the immortal palace will risk universal condemnation and kill Benefactor? In particular, you're just a lone cultivator. Even if your cultivation is extremely high, you're still different from the Buddhist sect. The immortal palace won't be afraid of you overturning the heavens. So that's how it is, I understand now. Xiao Hua was truly convinced. The vision of the family head of a Confucian cultivator family was truly extraordinary. The depth of his consideration of a problem was also not something that ordinary people could reach. Also, Zhu Cheng continued, as long as a person lives in this world, no matter how many good things you do, it's impossible to satisfy everyone. There will definitely be people who say good things about you, and some people who say bad things about you. Since that's the case, why should you care about what others say about you? Just do what you have to do. Benefactor, don't you know the cultivation methods of Confucian cultivators? I'm sure you've also read the ancient books of Confucian cultivators. Benefactor, you should also know about the so-called art of alliance and collaboration. Zhu Cheng continued to explain, it's the same principle as what I just said. Whether it's a Tao sect cultivator, a Buddhist sect arhat, or a Confucian cultivator, no matter how high or low their cultivation is, they must have enemies and old friends in this world. Cultivators who don't have enemies can't exist in this world. Similarly, cultivators who don't have close friends can't exist in this world. Since that's the case, why should Benefactor hide your cultivation? You only need to ally with your old friends and attack your enemies. That's all. Benefactor, the immortal palace you mentioned is actually not a monolithic entity, although it's controlled by the school of the military, the Confucians, the Mohists, and the legalists all have literary sages serving in it. Therefore, there may be conflicts. Benefactor, as long as you ally with some people and repel others, even if your cultivation is beyond the tolerance level of the immortal palace, what danger will you be in? Even the immortal emperor of the immortal palace sometimes has no choice. In particular, everything depends on the specific situation. Previously, the Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect were like family. Of course, the Taoist cultivators couldn't show their faces. Benefactor, if you show your cultivation, you'll be courting death. Now, the situation between the Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect is tense. The primordial chaos ancestor of the Taoist sect is restless after being released. The immortal palace can't control the primordial chaos ancestor, so the immortal palace may need another Taoist cultivator to restrain the primordial chaos ancestor and use another Taoist cultivator to disperse the pressure of the Buddhist sect. Therefore, the higher your cultivation is, the more you'll be favored by the immortal palace, and the more important you'll be. Of course, this is what I see as a bystander. It may not be right. Finally, Zhu Cheng said, moreover, in the 3 continents, the most guaranteed thing is strength. As the saying goes, there's always someone better than you. If Benefactor provokes too much, maybe the immortal palace's almighty will find you unpleasant and kill you in an instant. Hearing this, Xiao Hua's heart trembled. Zhu Cheng's point of view was absolutely subversive to him. He really didn't expect that having a high cultivation would have such benefit. But thinking about it, it was normal. What was the Penglai immortal realm for? Wasn't it a place where the Taoist cultivators of the 5th level and above could feel at ease? If the immortal palace didn't have to worry about anything, Wouldn't it be easier to just kill all the Taoist cultivators? Benefactor. While Xiao Hua was pondering, Zhu Cheng said in a low voice, "It used to be not far away." Xiao Hua came back to his senses and nodded. "What fellow immortal Zhu said is quite profound. I have to think about it again." "Yes," Zhu Cheng said with a smile, "if it's not about you, anyone can say it. But as long as it's about you, you have to be overcautious and think thrice before you act. Benefactor, you have your own plans. My words are only for reference. Used to be a butcher. The marketplace where he lived was full of filth. Normally, there would be a lot of mosquitoes and flies. But this morning, not even an ant could be seen. On the narrow street, there were only weeping sounds, and even these weeping sounds were weak. Used. Naturally, without Xiao Hua's instructions, Zhu Cheng had already released his divine sense to find Used and then whispered to him. "Old Master Zhu?" Hearing Zhu Cheng's voice, Used immediately jumped up from the ground. Looking at his wife and dog who were still sleeping soundly, he prepared to go out. Unexpectedly, just as he moved, his wife immediately noticed. Her thin and weak body slightly raised, and she called out in an extremely low voice, "Dog's father, what are you doing? Last night, didn't you already go out? After coming back, you didn't sleep for the whole night. Why don't you sleep a little longer?" Used was slightly stunned because when Used went out last night, his wife didn't make a sound. Even when he kissed her and dog, she didn't move at all. Used always thought that his wife was sleeping soundly the whole night. But he didn't expect that she knew his every move. Dog's mother. Used's nose twitched. It was said that husband and wife were birds in the same forest. When disaster struck, they would fly away separately. But now, facing life and death, his wife still knew his heart and didn't make him worry about her. He whispered, "Since you're awake, you should also get up. This is old Master Zhu of Zhu Clan Manor. Last night's matter is already in the past. I won't leave you again." Really? When Used's wife heard this, she was happy in her heart. However, she still slowly got up. Then, she came to her senses and hurriedly touched her thin cheeks with her withered hands. She hurriedly said, "Old Master Zhu is here. This concubine's appearance. Father." Maybe it was the two people's voices that woke Dog up, or maybe it was the empty stomach that woke Dog up from hunger. Dog opened his confused eyes and shouted, "I'm hungry." Rumble. Hearing the word hungry, not to mention Dog's stomach, even Used's stomachs growled. "Hey, it's all this old man's fault." Outside the wooden door, Xiao Hua's voice came, "This old man was thinking of giving you pills, but forgot to give you food. But then again, looking at Used's size, this old man doesn't think you're lacking food." Daoist Master Xiao. When Used heard this, his face changed greatly from fright. He didn't care to say anything to his wife and hurriedly ran out of the house, shouting, "This little one kowtows in salute to Daoist Master. This little one has seen." When Used saw Zhu Cheng's face, he was stunned again. He was somewhat confused. This was clearly Zhu Cheng, young Master Zhu. But why did Zhu Cheng say last night that young Master Zhu had already died in a ghost cave? -13. Chapter 3863. This old man is Zhu Cheng. Zhu Cheng's face didn't have a trace of a smile. He only said indifferently, "But last night, this old man was bestowed by Daoist Master Xiao and was able to extend my lifespan." Zeng was shocked. He looked at Xiao Hua with even more reverence and greeted Zhu Cheng, "This little one greets Master Zhu. Zeng, bring your family's big vat." Xiao Hua smiled, "This old man will give you food to cook porridge for Go-er and your wife." Good. Zeng laughed and hurriedly turned his head and shouted, "Go-er's mother, quickly come and greet Daoist Master Xiao." Saying that, Zeng went to get the big vat again. "No need to trouble yourself," Zhu Cheng said in a low voice, "since Zeng is the descendant of a great scholar, he has a great relationship with my Zhu family. I didn't know about it before, but now that I know, how can I let them be in such a destitute situation? Although my Zhu family village isn't a luxurious house, it can still provide food for Brother Zeng's family. At this time, Zeng's wife came out holding Go-er. Seeing the sunlight flash, Zeng's wife's body slightly swayed, unable to support herself. Xiao Hua hurriedly raised his hand to support her, and Zeng's wife shouted, "Thank you, Master Zhu, thank you, Master Zhu." Zeng opened his mouth, and his face showed a trace of embarrassment. He wanted to refuse, but looking at his wife's thin and weak body, and the child sticking out his tongue to lick his lips, he could only lower his head slightly. Xiao Hua had already seen it, and said with a smile, "Zeng family and Zhu family were good friends, you don't need to doubt this point. Although there is no record of this in the books, think about it, if not for some things, how could your Zeng family and Zhu family be so close? How could your Zeng family's descendants and Zhu family's descendants have the same mission? Moreover, this old man might as well tell you that last night, at the critical moment, the wills left by Zeng Zi, Zun Zi, and Zhu Zi joined hands to fight against the enemy. Although they didn't let this old man pass any message to you, this old man thinks that if your three families can help each other, you will be able to accomplish your mission. Many thanks for your guidance, spiritual master." Seng Zeng's heart relaxed slightly, and he bowed in thanks. "Hihi, in the past, perhaps you still had some doubts and couldn't let go of your face." Xiao Hua smiled, "However, if you knew that your Zeng family, Zun family, and Zhu family's ancestral shrines were all together, you would no longer doubt this old man's words." "What? Daoist master? Is what you said true?" Not to mention the past, even Zhu Cheng was shocked. "Zeng, does your Zeng family have a genealogy?" Xiao Hua didn't answer, but looked at Zeng and asked. Excitement appeared on Seng Zeng's face as he hurriedly said, yes, please wait a moment." After saying that, Zeng rushed into the house and came out with a yellow genealogy book. When Xiao Hua took the genealogy book and opened it, sure enough, the genealogy book was written in yellow handwriting. At the end was Zeng Yang and Zheng Yang. Presumably, Zeng Yang was Go-er's name. After reading it, Xiao Hua returned the genealogy book to Zeng and said, "Take this thing first. When Zhu Cheng has settled your family, you will follow this old man to Jingyu County to find Zun Qing. Their genealogy book should be written in blue handwriting." Taking advantage of the time when Zhu Cheng called his family to pick up Zeng's family, Xiao Hua took out the spirit jujube and gave it to Zeng's wife and Go-er. Then, he looked at Go-er's muscles and bones with interest. Looking at Zeng's slightly eager eyes, Xiao Hua smiled and dripped a drop of the spirit liquid refined by spiritual wisdom into Go-er's mouth. Seeing that Go-er's body was hot and dizzy, Xiao Hua smiled and said, "Go-er's aptitude is limited. I'm afraid he won't be able to achieve much by practicing my Taoist cultivation method. This spirit awakening fluid can open Go-er's spiritual wisdom. If he reads books and practices Confucian cultivation, he will be able to reach the great Confucian realm." "Thank you, spiritual master." Go-er's mother had taken the spirit jujube and already had strength. Hearing Xiao Hua's words, her face showed ecstasy. Tears dripped from her eyes, and she held her child and was about to kowtow. That ecstasy was even stronger than if she could survive. Zeng knew what his wife was thinking. Although he was a descendant of the Zeng family, he was a butcher after all and didn't know anything about economics. Now that he could hear Xiao Hua's words, it was not only his fortune, but also the Zeng family's fortune. He hurriedly bowed and said, "Thank you, spiritual master." "Thank you, Master Zhu." Zhu Cheng hurriedly helped Zeng up, and his eyes flashed with a strange light. In fact, Xiao Hua didn't need to personally check Go-er's aptitude. Just from Go-er's dull eyes, Zhu Cheng could see that Go-er's aptitude was mediocre. But after taking Xiao Hua's spirit awakening fluid, Xiao Hua actually concluded that Go-er could reach the great Confucian realm, which really surprised Zhu Cheng. However, Zhu Cheng would never doubt Xiao Hua's words. He couldn't help but think of his own child. "Spiritual Master Xiao." Zhu Cheng slightly bit his lips and whispered, "My son." Before Zhu Cheng finished speaking, Xiao Hua smiled and said, "Fellow immortal Zhu, you have a son at an old age. Zhu Cheng is born with deficiencies. Although he is much smarter than others, his future achievements are limited. Take this spirit awakening fluid too." Xiao Hua said, took out another jade bottle and handed it to Zhu Cheng. Zhu Cheng's hands trembled a little, and he hurriedly took it and put it into his arms. Xiao Hua said again, "There is a lot of spirit awakening fluid in this jade bottle. The Zhu family, the Zeng family, and the Zun family can all use it, but each person can only take 1 drop. If you take too much, without my mental cultivation method, your life will be in danger." Yes. Hearing that there was a lot of spirit awakening fluid in the jade bottle, Zhu Cheng was even more delighted and thanked him loudly. This bottle of spirit awakening fluid could create many great confusions. Not only the Zhu family, but also the Zeng family and the Zun family could gradually revive. Not long after, a servant of the Zhu family came and took the Zeng family's wife and Goer back to the Zhu family village. Xiao Hua took Zeng and Zhu Cheng to Jingyu County again. Although Zun Qing of Jingyu County was already old, he still had a cultivation base after all. Compared to his previous family's circumstances, it was unknown how many times better. Looking at Zun Qing's son, Zun Mi's quick-witted eyes, although he was still lacking when it came to dealing with people, how was he still the retarded Zun Qing spoke of? Looking at Zun Qing's happy face, Zhu Cheng was even more expectant of Xiao Hua's spirit awakening fluid. Hearing Xiao Hua's words, Zun Qing hurriedly found his family's genealogy. As Xiao Hua guessed, it was recorded in blue handwriting. Finally, it was Zun Qing and Zun Mi. Xiao Hua was overjoyed and explained the matter clearly. Zun Qing knew that he was going to find the Zun family's ancestral temple, so how could he refuse? Just as he was about to get up, Zun Mi suddenly fell to the ground and kowtowed to Xiao Hua. Spiritual Master, I have something to ask of you. Junior. Seeing his stupid son call himself a junior in front of Xiao Hua, Zun Qing's eyes almost fell out. He almost forgot to scold Zun Mi for disturbing Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua looked at Zun Mi kneeling on the ground with a smile. Xiao Hua had only let Xian Songzi and the other scattered nascent souls take the spirit awakening fluid made by developing spiritual wisdom. Zun Mi was the first mortal to take it, so he was a little curious about the real effect of this spiritual medicine, so Xiao Hua asked, "What do you want to ask of me?" Previously, I was muddle-headed and couldn't remember everything that I saw. Now that I've taken Spiritual Master's spiritual medicine, everything that happened before can appear before my eyes. Everything that happened from my birth to last night is vivid in my mind. Junior's father has worked too hard for Junior's sake. Therefore, Junior saw that Uncle Zhu obtained Reverend's medicinal pill that could rejuvenate his youth. Junior boldly asked Reverend to bestow the medicinal pill, so that Junior could personally deliver it in front of Father to consume, to express Junior's gratitude. Hearing Zun Mi's clear and orderly explanation, Zun Qing's body trembled with joy. When he understood that this was Zun Mi's filial piety, Zun Qing cried like a child, feeling that all of his pain and hard work weren't in vain. Son. Zun Qing also knelt down and hugged Zun Mi. There are no parents in the world who don't love their children. What your mother and father did for you is what we should do. You don't need to think too much. It's a pity that your mother couldn't see you like this. Otherwise, who knows how happy she would be. Father. Speaking of his mother, Zun Mi naturally also shed tears. It was as if the world in the past had nothing to do with him, and now, whatever he wanted to do, he couldn't. Zun Qing, Zun Mi, wait for me. Xiao Hua smiled, took out a rejuvenation pill and handed it to Zun Mi. Zun Mi has filial piety, how can this old man not fulfill it? This is the rejuvenation pill, give it to your father to consume. Thank you, Spiritual Master, thank you, Spiritual Master. Zun Mi pulled Zun Qing up, carefully took the rejuvenation pill, and respectfully handed it to Zun Qing. Father, you've raised this boy for his entire life. Now, this boy is unable to repay you. This is the rejuvenation pill that I begged Spiritual Master Xiao to give. Father, please consume it. In the future, this boy will definitely show filial piety to Father and revive our Zun family's business. Good, good. Zun Qing took the rejuvenation pill, but didn't consume it. He wiped his tears and said, now that Spiritual Master's matter is important, Father will accept this pill first and consume it later. Yes, Father. Zun Mi naturally obeyed his father's instructions, but Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand and said, don't. If you consume it, Consume it now. I'm not here, but it's easy for something to happen. Zun Qing naturally didn't know how many disasters and karma the rejuvenation pill had caused. However, since it was Xiao Hua's idea, and also his boy's filial piety, Zun Qing consumed the rejuvenation pill. He felt traces of numbness in his meridians, and a long-lost vitality gradually spread throughout his body. Father! Even though Zun Mi was already mentally prepared, when he saw his father slowly becoming a young man similar to him, he couldn't help but be shocked. All right. Xiao Hua smiled and said, Zun Mi, this old man has already done what I promised you. Now, your father will follow this old man to find your Zun family's ancestral hall. You can wait at home by yourself. Yes, spiritual master. In Zun Mi's eyes, Xiao Hua was no less than a deity. Zun Mi respectfully replied. Spiritual master Xiao, please. Zun Qing and the others similarly bowed and said. Xiao Hua nodded. He brought along the auspicious cloud and flew towards the ancestral hall. Zhu Cheng and Zun Qing carefully followed behind him. -13. Chapter 3864. Along the way, Xiao Hua scanned the area with his divine sense. He saw that the Zhu family really did have some tricks up their sleeves. Although they didn't have a lot of people, the distribution of food was much better than his. If nothing unexpected happened, the remaining 600,000 people in the 3 towns would no longer have to worry about their lives. As for the current Zhu Cheng, he actually already somewhat understood why Xiao Hua brought him, Zeng and Zun Qing to find the ancestral shrine. This must be related to the bone he gave Xiao Hua that year. It would be unrealistic to say that Zhu Cheng didn't have some thoughts in his heart. However, when Zhu Cheng thought about the kindness Xiao Hua showed him that day, and the kindness he showed to the 3 families last night, as well as the kindness he showed to the millions of secular people in Wuyuan County, Jingyu County and Fancheng County, Zhu Cheng admittedly felt a bit bitter in his mouth. However, he already made a decision in his heart. For a benevolent and righteous cultivator like Daoist Xiao, some ordinary selfish motives really don't count for much. The 4 of them escaped underground. However, after just a few hundred feet, Zun Qing was unable to support himself. After Xiao Hua sensed it, he simply waved his big sleeve and brought Zhu Cheng along with him to escape underground. Seeing that it was getting deeper and deeper, Zhu Cheng and the others were overwhelmed with shock. They didn't think that their ancestral shrine was actually hidden so well. If it weren't for Xiao Hua, they wouldn't have been able to find it even after 10,000 years. It's here. Even Xiao Hua himself found the location of that small dot with great difficulty after using Heaven's Eye. After Xiao Hua waved his hand and laid down a barrier, he raised his hand and pointed. This, here. Zeng looked left and right at the khaki-colored brilliance, but he really couldn't see anything. Zhu Cheng looked left and right, then asked tentatively, Benefactor, is this an illusion outside the ancestral shrine? As for Zun Qing, he simply didn't say anything, quietly waiting for Xiao Hua to reveal it. Xiao Hua slightly shook his head, then took out the bone and said with a smile, Zhu Cheng, this is the heavenly book's true explanation left behind by your Zhu family. Do you know? Yes, this is an item left behind by my ancestors. Zhu Cheng straightened his face and nodded. But even my ancestors couldn't understand the mystery in it for many generations, and my Zhu family was looked down upon by the Confucian cultivators in the world because of the true enlightenment of the heavenly book. Therefore, after you rescued me from the prison of the Bronze Pillar country, I offered this thing to you. This thing has nothing to do with my Zhu family anymore. Hehe, fellow immortal Zhu, you worry too much. Xiao Hua said with a smile. That's not what I meant. If it belongs to your Zhu family, this old man will return it to your Zhu family. Even if it belongs to the Zeng family or the Zun family, this old man will not covet it too much. Spiritual master. Zun Qing glanced at Zhu Cheng and said, You've given our 3 clans a new lease on life. If you have any orders, our 3 clans wouldn't dare to disobey. Since fellow immortal Zhu has already offered this item to our benefactor, I'm also willing to offer my clan's genealogy to our benefactor. Yes, I'm the same. Zeng hurriedly echoed. There's no need for that. Xiao Hua said with a smile as he raised the bone. There are 2 gathas engraved on it. Its ancestral wood resembling Xiantian Qi, genealogy silken descendants.
Oh!
Zhu Cheng, Zun Qing, and Zeng stared blankly for a moment. Xiao Hua took out the book. With a wave of his hand, he once again used the silken cloth to wrap around the small bone. He said with a smile, "This old man is untalented." Previously, I had a fortuitous encounter and happened to obtain this book. Inside it, there's a strange silken cloth. Silken cloth? Zhu Cheng's heart tightened. He hurriedly asked, "Benefactor, is this the secret you were talking about earlier?" "Yes." Xiao Hua thought for a moment, then nodded and said, "I won't hide it from fellow immortal Zhu. Previously, this Xiao did indeed encounter another branch of your Zhu family. This book is the reward for helping them remove their curse. Thank the heavens." Zhu Cheng was truly speechless. He raised his hands and clasped them together towards the heavens as he prayed, "I also thank spiritual master Xiao for your care towards my Zhu family." Xiao Hua said with a smile, "Of course, forgive this Xiao for not being able to tell you the location of that branch of Zhu family's descendants right now." No matter. Zhu Cheng said with a smile, "I'm already very happy to know that they're living freely in that place." Xiao Hua pointed at the silken cloth and said, "The first line of the gatha is ancestral wood resembling innate qi. This Xiao already saw it last night. Your 3 ancestral shrines should be together, right inside this silken cloth. The last line is clan records silken cloth descendant. We'll have to rely on the clan records of these 3 fellow immortals." "All right." Zhu Cheng was the first to agree. He took out the Zhu family's clan records. However, the clan records were placed beside the silken cloth without any changes. Zun Qing said in a low voice, "Descendant. Fellow immortal Zhu, since it's a descendant, how can we determine if it's a descendant of the Zhu family? I'm afraid it can only be my Zhu family's blood essence." Zhu Cheng was used to using blood essence to strengthen restrictions, so he was the first to think. "Old Master Zhu, you can try first." Zeng Qing nodded. "If nothing unexpected happens, it should be so." "All right." Zhu Cheng nodded and forced out his blood essence. When the blood essence fell on the clan records, red names rushed out from the clan records, like pink butterflies fluttering around the silken cloth. Seeing the noble qi faintly seeping out from the void, Xiao Hua smiled and looked at Zun Qing. The excitement in Zun Qing's heart was not any less than Xiao Hua's. He hurriedly took out the genealogy book and dropped a drop of blood essence onto the Zun family's genealogy book. Thus, just like Zhu Cheng, blue names flew out from the genealogy book one after another, corresponding to the red names. The red and blue characters danced on the silk, looking extremely beautiful. "It's this little one's turn." At this moment, Zeng family had never felt so important before. Looking at Xiao Hua's expectant gaze, Zeng family straightened his chest and said, "Not to mention blood essence, even if this little one's life is given to Daoist Xiao, this little one is also willing." As he spoke, Zeng family put his index finger in his mouth and bit off a piece of flesh. Blood flowed out from the finger. "Fellow Daoist Zeng has taken out too much blood essence." Xiao Hua smiled and said, "This Xiao owes you a favor." He. Zeng family's clan records felt hot in his heart. He took out the clan records and smeared the blood on his finger on the clan records. Wang. Yellow names flew out from the Zeng family's clan records. However, just as these names flew out, the red and blue names from before emitted buzzing sounds and rushed towards the yellow names. When the red, yellow, and blue characters collided, there was a rumbling sound. Strange inscriptions appeared from the 3 characters. When all the inscriptions fell on the silken cloth, the cloth rapidly shrank and wrapped around the tiny dot. Boom! When it was extremely small, Wanxiang birth appeared again. That small, almost invisible dot expanded with a loud rumble when the silk fell. The huge wave pushed Xiao Hua and the others away by more than 300 meters. And within the silken cloth, an ancestral shrine that was also 100 feet in size appeared underground. Outside the ancestral shrine, red, yellow, and blue clouds shrouded the ancestral shrine. The ethereal atmosphere was as solemn as an immortal's palace. Is Is this the Zhu family's ancestral hall? Zhu Cheng asked in disbelief as he looked at the majestic structure in front of him. If there is no accident, this should be the ancestral shrine of your three families. Xiao Hua looked at the simple and unadorned building and said with a smile, "You will know when you enter. Daoist Xiao, please go first." Zhu Cheng hurriedly raised his hand and said. Xiao Hua waved his hand. This is the ancestral shrine of the Zhu family, Zeng family, and Zun family. This Xiao is an outsider. You and the other masters should go first. Okay. Zhu Cheng didn't say much and agreed. He floated into the red, yellow, and blue clouds. Sure enough, the red clouds appeared and wrapped around Zhu Cheng, slowly sending him into the ancestral shrine. Oh, not good. Seeing the red clouds, Xiao Hua's heart was moved. He suddenly thought, damn it, does this ancestral shrine also require bloodline to enter? Otherwise, how can it suppress the underworld judge? After waiting for Zeng Qian and Zun Qing to enter the yellow and blue clouds respectively, Xiao Hua also took a deep breath and rushed to the front of the three-colored cloud. Sure enough, just as Xiao Hua came in contact with the clouds, a gentle but tenacious force pushed Xiao Hua, not allowing him to get close to the ancestral shrine. Damn it! Xiao Hua scolded with a smile. This is entering the bridal chamber and forgetting the matchmaker. Daoist Xiao. Zhu Cheng and the other two saw that Xiao Hua didn't go in and didn't go in. They came out and said, if Daoist Xiao can't go in, we won't go in either. Looking at the three family disciples who didn't forget kindness, Xiao Hua said with a smile, no matter, you wait and see this Xiao's method. After saying that, Xiao Hua's body flashed with a bronze luster. He then took a few steps forward and came in contact with the tenacious force. Xiao Hua raised his hands and formed the seal of a mountain, smashing it towards the clouds. Boom! The clouds surged and the silk shook extremely. A layer of faint Buddhist light appeared in the midst of dizziness. Within this Buddhist light, the heavenly flower and the heavenly maiden were all present, the Buddha and the heavenly dragon were all present. However, where the Buddhist light rippled, layers of mountains fell from the sky. Not to mention the heavenly flower and the heavenly maiden, not to mention the Buddha and the heavenly dragon, they all turned into nothingness. Sure enough, Xiao Hua said with a smile, under the restriction of this origin formation is a Buddhist formation. As long as a flaw appears in the Buddhist formation, the power of the origin formation will be greatly reduced. After saying that, Xiao Hua condensed the Buddhist seal and struck it a few times. He raised his hands again, as if he was holding on to a door, and shouted, open. Immediately after, the muscles on Xiao Hua's arms trembled. Countless forces of the stars and moon fell from the sky. The red, yellow, and blue clouds were torn apart by Xiao Hua. After that, Xiao Hua's figure turned into wind and rushed into the ancestral shrine. Good. Seeing Xiao Hua enter, Zhu Cheng and the others all praised in their hearts. Then, Zhu Cheng and Zun Qing urged their figures to rush into the clouds. Xiao Hua was a step slower. Just as he was about to step into the clouds, suddenly, a powerful divine sense swept over from the ground. Following this divine sense, a cold shadow fell. Xiao Hua's restriction was instantly torn apart by this cold shadow. The cold shadow was like a huge shadow that covered Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua simply didn't have any reaction, and immediately stood there blankly like a stone statue. However, this blankness only lasted for a moment. Xiao Hua moved again. He raised his head and looked at the clouds that were close at hand. A trace of a strange smile appeared on his face. His raised leg fell down, and his entire figure disappeared into the silk of the ancestral shrine. -13. Chapter 3865. Xiao Hua had already entered the ancestral shrine, so he didn't notice the previous change. The warning sign of the barrier being torn apart was also blocked by the origin formation of the ancestral shrine. Xiao Hua stood in front of the wooden door, squinting his eyes. The ancestral temple was made of blue bricks and green tiles, and the faint inscriptions on them flowed slowly with the clouds, isolating the divine sense. Moreover, Xiao Hua could vaguely hear the sound of a wooden fish and the chanting of scriptures coming out of the ancestral temple. It must be here. Xiao Hua said with a smile, it's most suitable to suppress the ghost judge in this ancestral shrine. Benefactor. Zhu Cheng, Zun Qing, and Zheng Zheng, who came in later, respectfully stood behind Xiao Hua and whispered, what about me? How do I get in? Xiao Hua raised his hand and said, the three of you will naturally push open the door and enter. Then, Xiao Hua explained, the clouds before were blocking the restriction of the ancestral shrine, preventing others from entering. Since we're already here, there shouldn't be any other obstacles. You just need to go in. All right. Zhu Cheng nodded, then knelt down in front of the wooden door and kowtowed. This junior, Zhu Cheng, is unfilial. It wasn't until I entered that I found the Zhu family's ancestral hall. This junior kowtows and apologizes. I hope that the ancestors of the Zhu family will forgive this junior's sins. Zhu Cheng's tears flowed down as he spoke. Before Zhu Cheng could stand up, Zun Qing impatiently knelt down by Zhu Cheng's side. Tears similarly covered his face as he kowtowed and apologized, and the wild joy and regret on his face was obvious. He hesitated for a moment before kneeling on the other side of Zhu Cheng. Like Zun Qing, he kowtowed and whispered something as tears flowed down his cheeks. After the three of them finished kowtowing and repenting, they stood up, looked at each other, and walked to the front of the vermilion door. They solemnly raised their hands and pushed it in unison. Understood. The sound of the wooden door being pushed open was very stiff. However, when the three of them looked into the ancestral hall, the three of them rushed in almost at the same time. He saw that it was a rather large room. It was empty inside, except for an altar at the head of the room. Behind the altar, there were three wooden statues standing on the wall. This wooden statue was precisely the one Xiao Hua had seen in the night sky earlier. It was used to suppress the ghost judge. Of course, there were many deep holes on the three wooden statues. Some of the holes even penetrated their bodies. Zhu Zi and Zheng Zi's wooden statues had their arms and legs broken. Even more than half of Zun Zi's head had been cut off. There was no trace of it. However, although these wooden statues were damaged, Zhu Zi's wooden statue was covered in layers of faint red brilliance that swirled up clouds like surging sparks. On Zun Zi's and Zheng Zi's wooden statues, blue sparks and yellow sparks similarly swirled up clouds and surged towards the sparks. The three colored sparks contrasted with each other, and a mighty, solemn, dignified, and awe-inspiring aura emanated from the three wooden statues, enveloping the entire ancestral hall. Ancestors. The three of them rushed into the ancestral hall and respectfully kowtowed again. Only then did they look at the wooden statues of their ancestors. Xiao Hua entered after them. Standing in front of the three wooden statues, he bowed and saluted. Junior Xiao Hua greets the three seniors. Last night, although Junior joined hands with the three seniors to resist the enemy, Junior's cultivation was limited. The damage to the three seniors' wooden statues was also Junior's fault. However, Junior asks the three seniors to be at ease. The ghost suppressed by the seniors has already been eliminated by Junior. The curse of the three seniors' descendants has also been broken by Junior. Whether it is Wuyuan County, Jingyu County, Fanchang County, or the Zhu, Zheng, and Zun families, they are all safe now. Yes, Junior once again reports to the ancestors that Xiao Hua, Daoist Xiao, is benevolent and righteous. His heart cares for the world, and there is no difference between Daoist and Confucian. With Daoist Xiao's help, the majority of the villagers in my Wuyuan County, Jingyu County, and Fanchang County were saved. Moreover, with Daoist Xiao's help, the villagers in the three counties also had food to tide over the disaster. Therefore, Junior brought Daoist Xiao to the ancestral shrine. If the ancestors left any shade in the ancestral shrine, Junior is willing to offer it to Daoist Xiao. We also have the same idea. Zun Qing and Zheng Qian also whispered to the wooden statues. The three people's voices had just faded when they saw that the originally empty offering table respectively flashed with three colored clouds. The clouds were precisely holding a book. On the book, 4 large words flashed with dazzling light. Wasn't it true explanation of the heavenly book? True explanation of the heavenly book? There really is such an item? Not only was Zhu Cheng greatly shocked, even Xiao Hua was overjoyed. At this time, Zheng Qian, who was standing in front of Xiao Hua, suddenly laughed loudly. Ha ha ha, this world really has the true explanation of the heavenly book. With this item, this old man's literary star is just around the corner. You're not Zheng Qian, who are you? Hearing this, Xiao Hua couldn't help but be greatly alarmed. As he berated, he waved his hand and grabbed the true explanation of the heavenly book out of thin air. Xiao Hua's heaven and earth sleeve technique was now very powerful. As soon as it was used, the entire ancestral shrine was enveloped by Xiao Hua's technique. Strands of crystal threads flashed in the air like tiny dragons. A small daoist wild cultivator also dares to snatch from this old man. Zheng Qian sneered and similarly waved his hand. Boom! Thousands of inscriptions rushed out like ants. With a series of loud sounds, the crystal threads were smashed into pieces. Xiao Hua's heaven and earth sleeve technique was also defeated. Zheng Qian immediately waved his right hand and a gust of wind appeared. The 3 wooden statues along with the true explanation of the heavenly book all fell into his hand. Zheng Qian simply didn't stay in the ancestral shrine for long. His figure flashed and like a shadow, he swept past Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua clenched his fists and without hesitation, he smashed them towards the shadow. At the same time, he opened his mouth and a sword light flashed towards the shadow. A mere 5th level essence energy dares to be arrogant. Zheng Qian's shadow had just flown in front of Xiao Hua when it suddenly made a strange turn and charged towards the ancestral shrine's wall. Zheng Qian sneered and said, "If it weren't for the fact that you have some kindness towards the people of Fengxiong country, this old man definitely wouldn't let you go. Get out of the way." Boom! Not only did Xiao Hua's fists miss, but his flying sword also missed. When the flying sword turned and chased after Zheng Qian's figure had already crashed into the wall. Although countless inscriptions rushed out from the wall, the ancestral shrine's restriction was still broken by the shadow. In the blink of an eye, Zheng Qian disappeared from Xiao Hua's sight. Xiao Hua was abnormally angry. Didn't he painstakingly show his kindness just to obtain the true explanation of the heavenly book? But he didn't expect that at the last moment, it would actually be taken away by this so-called Zheng Qian. Moreover, listening to Zheng Qian's voice, the person who came was at least a great grandmaster. He might even be a literary sage. His strength far surpassed Xiao Hua's. Where do you think you're going? Xiao Hua's mind raced as he secretly pondered over his own methods to deal with the enemy. His figure turned into a rainbow and rushed towards the hole, chasing after Zheng Qian. Zheng Qian's speed was extremely fast, but he was still not faster than Xiao Hua. When Zheng Qian flew out of the ground, Xiao Hua had already caught up. As soon as Zheng Qian came out of the ground, a dark shadow immediately flew out from his body and landed in the body of a thin scholar. That scholar was about 40 years old and had a thin face. The scholar looked at Xiao Hua who was chasing after him, and his eyes revealed a trace of surprise. However, he still didn't plan to meet Xiao Hua face to face. His whole body surged with an awe-inspiring aura, and his entire figure turned into a gust of wind. Along with an earth-shattering sound of wind and thunder, he instantly disappeared into the horizon. Humph! Xiao Hua sneered. The figure of the green-robed Xiao Hua, who had long been in control of the invisible nascent soul, swayed slightly in mid-air and rushed towards the place where the scholar disappeared. Xiao Hua's body flickered with lightning as he chased after the scholar with almost the same speed as teleportation. In the blink of an eye, in the air hundreds of miles away, there was a loud bang. The brilliance of the Kunlun mirror penetrated through the void, and then, Xiao Hua, who was in mid-air, opened his delusion destruction Dharma eye, and a thick silver light immediately disappeared into the void. Catcher. There was a sound like a thunderclap, and the void in front of Xiao Hua rapidly surged. Pillars of awe-inspiring aura rushed out from the void, and after a moment, the light and shadow distorted, and the scholar's slightly embarrassed figure appeared from within. Damn thing. As soon as the scholar appeared, his face showed a fierce expression as he cursed. This old man didn't want to kill you, but you actually dared to use a spell to chase after this old man. Since that's the case, don't blame this old man for being ruthless. As he spoke, the scholar's figure strangely swelled, and a big hand like a huge palm leaf fan came grabbing at him. The big hand emitted a silver-white luster, and Xiao Hua simply couldn't dodge before it grabbed Xiao Hua's arm. Then, the luster on the big hand sharply increased, and it was sharper than a flying sword as it slashed at Xiao Hua's body. Damn it! Xiao Hua was really sullen. This scholar was definitely the strongest person he had ever seen. He could also be considered a Daoist cultivator with 1 foot in the 6th level of origin energy, but in front of this scholar, he didn't have the slightest strength to resist. Clang! The silver-white luster fell and hit Xiao Hua's body, creating a series of sparks. Xiao Hua's Daoist robe was destroyed, but there wasn't a trace of injury on his body. Ka! At the same time, a golden light flashed, and Xiao Hua summoned the soaring dragon shears out of thin air, chopping at the silver-white big hand. Timpage. A muffled groan, but it was actually suppressed pain that resounded in the air several dozen li away. The big hand quickly retreated, and Xiao Hua could clearly see that the scholar's sleeve had been cut off, and the silver-white skin on his arm was lacerated, and silver blood flowed out. Damn it, damn it, damn it. The scholar was extremely angry, and a thunderous roar surged around Xiao Hua. The scholar's figure also seemed to swell and become ethereal. Go! Xiao Hua's eyes slightly narrowed, and he calmly waved his hand. The soaring dragon shears flashed again in the air, and a golden light several hundred zhong long streaked across the vast sky. Unfortunately, the scholar's figure seemed to be a real shadow. The soaring dragon shears cut through the shadow, and in a moment, the shadow reconnected. Go to hell! Following the scholar's roar, Xiao Hua suddenly felt that the space several li to his left was extremely trembling, and long spatial cracks appeared without warning, quickly rushing towards him. The magic power in Xiao Hua's body froze, and he couldn't escape from this space. -13. Chapter 3866. Xiao Hua was very anxious. He suddenly urged the heavenly law's embodiment of heaven and earth, and the power of the stars and moon fell with a loud bang. Roar! Xiao Hua roared, trying his best to resist the huge power that seemed to be like heaven and earth. At the same time, lightning flashed around Xiao Hua's body, and dozens of scattered nascent souls flew out from his lower dantian. As soon as they landed in the air, they immediately used teleportation to rush out of the imprisonment. This is... The Confucian cultivator suddenly saw so many nascent souls and couldn't help but be stunned. A hurricane rolled in the air and suddenly wrapped around one of the nascent souls that had just teleported. GG. The nascent soul's face showed panic. His hands rubbed together, and a spell was used to fight against the imprisonment of the Confucian cultivator. Pah! The Confucian cultivator sneered, and the nascent soul was unexpectedly crushed by him. A powerful force was generated and rushed toward Xiao Hua's embodiment of heaven. Boom! Although Xiao Hua's embodiment of heaven only shook slightly under the force of the nascent soul's explosion and didn't suffer any damage, Xiao Hua's face became ugly again. Ha ha ha! Seeing that the nascent soul didn't have any special magical ability, the Confucian cultivator couldn't help but laugh. However, before his laughter fell, a burst of thunder sounded in the sky. Within 1,000 miles, red clouds flowed like blood. The dozens of nascent souls that had teleported out from Xiao Hua's lower dantian were now sitting cross-legged around Xiao Hua and the Confucian cultivator. It was a simple capital star array that surrounded Xiao Hua and the Confucian cultivator. What is this? Strange ripples flickered around the dozens of nascent souls, and streaks of lightning stretched across the surface of their bodies. The ripples covered an area of 100 miles around them. Although the Confucian scholar could not figure out what was going on, the power of heaven and earth contained in the ripples made him tremble with fear. The Confucian scholar didn't hesitate at all. He waved his hand and grabbed another nascent soul. With a bang, the nascent soul was killed without any suspense. However, just as the Confucian scholar's figure turned into a stream of light and was about to escape through the gap, a tricolored beam of light shot out from the gap and struck the Confucian scholar. The Confucian scholar was stunned and hastily dodged. It was at this moment that dozens of bolts of lightning descended from the red tribulation clouds and struck the dozens of nascent souls. The Confucian scholar was in the range of the nascent souls. The power of heaven and earth in the lightning immediately alerted him. He was stunned and exclaimed, "Lightning! Lightning tribulation? Why are there so many nascent soul tribulations? What kind of lightning tribulation is this?" What this Confucian scholar naturally didn't know was that the 100 scattered nascent souls in Xiao Hua's lower dantian had already cultivated to the first tribulation scattered nascent soul realm. Now, they had to go through a true lightning tribulation in order to break through the bottleneck of the first tribulation scattered nascent soul realm. Xiao Hua was originally worried about how these 100 scattered nascent souls would go through the tribulation one by one. Now, he met this terrifying Confucian scholar. When Xiao Hua was powerless to deal with him, he immediately thought of the lightning tribulation. This Confucian scholar might not be afraid of the lightning tribulation of a first tribulation scattered nascent soul, but the lightning tribulation of 10 first tribulation scattered nascent souls would injure this Confucian scholar. What if there were dozens of first tribulation scattered nascent souls? In Xiao Hua's opinion, even if the Confucian scholar didn't die, he would lose a layer of skin, right? As for all the scattered nascent souls coming out, Xiao Hua also thought about it. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua himself couldn't guarantee that he would survive under the lightning tribulation of 100 first tribulation scattered nascent souls. Boom! Under the lightning tribulation, the Confucian scholar hurriedly dodged. He didn't want to be affected by the lightning tribulation of the scattered nascent souls. However, even if he wanted to dodge, those dozens of scattered nascent souls weren't willing to let him dodge. These scattered nascent souls suddenly teleported towards the Confucian scholar, and all the lightning tribulation struck towards the Confucian scholar. Damn it! At this time, the Confucian scholar had already understood the intentions of these scattered nascent souls. Although he didn't know how Xiao Hua did this, he looked at Xiao Hua, who was also within the range of the lightning tribulation, laughed sinisterly, and teleported towards Xiao Hua. However, before the Confucian scholar could fly a few miles, the entire area within dozens of miles was filled with the power of heaven and earth. Not only the Confucian scholar, but Xiao Hua and the dozens of scattered nascent souls were also imprisoned in place by the lightning tribulation, unable to move. Catcher! What shocked Xiao Hua was that even the imprisonment of the lightning tribulation didn't seem to be able to stop the Confucian scholar's struggle. The space shattered like glass, and the Confucian scholar actually moved, but his movement was rather slow. Cha. At this time, the lightning tribulation fell on the scattered nascent souls. The scattered nascent souls lowered their heads and closed their eyes, forming the same strange seals in their hands. As the scattered nascent soul spirit bodies melted layer by layer in the lightning, mysterious talismans surged within the spirit bodies. These talismans absorbed the power of the lightning tribulation while transforming the spirit bodies. All the scattered nascent souls grew healthily with the flickering lightning. The lightning tribulation naturally also affected the Confucian scholar and Xiao Hua. Layers of lightning whistled towards the two of them. While the Confucian scholar gritted his teeth to resist the lightning, he glared fiercely at Xiao Hua. As for Xiao Hua, his lightning cultivation had already reached a certain level. His heavenly phoenix demon body flashed with a bronze brilliance under the lightning, looking quite relaxed. The Confucian scholar narrowed his eyes and did his best to resist the lightning tribulation. He secretly thought, after the lightning tribulation, this old man will definitely kill this brat. However, before the Confucian scholar could think, he saw the dozens of nascent souls suddenly raise their heads in unison. Their eyes flashed with a kind of mockery. Then, the dozens of nascent souls raised their hands at the same time. As the dozens of small hands rubbed, the lightning tribulation that fell on the nascent souls suddenly moved and swept towards the capital star formation. The Confucian scholar was shocked and hurriedly shouted, How is this possible? Yes, this was the lightning of the lightning tribulation. How could nascent souls control it? But the Confucian scholar didn't know that the dozens of nascent souls in Xiao Hua's lower dantian were constantly being bombarded by the 5 qi righteous thunder. Although the 5 qi righteous thunder couldn't be considered a real lightning tribulation, the dozens of nascent souls were already very familiar with it. And now, the power of the lightning tribulation had been integrated into the bodies of the nascent souls. Although the lightning tribulation was the power of heaven and earth, the essence of the lightning tribulation was also lightning. The dozens of nascent souls had long been familiar with lightning. Although it was a bit difficult to control the power of the lightning tribulation, it wasn't impossible. Seeing the lightning tribulation of the dozens of nascent souls hit him, the Confucian scholar's face revealed a rare look of despair. There was even a trace of regret in his eyes. Of course, under the roaring power of heaven and earth, he didn't have any extra reaction. In an instant, the lightning completely drowned the Confucian scholar and Xiao Hua like an ocean wave. The power of heaven and earth was difficult to fathom, let alone when all the lightning tribulation hit together. Even Xiao Hua, who had already gone through many lightning tribulations and cultivated the lightning escape technique, with the heavenly phoenix demonic body and the bloodline of the absolute saint, Xiao Hua's body turned into flowing liquid under the lightning. Damn it! Xiao Hua endured the indescribable pain all over his body and the impact of heaven and earth's aura on his soul. He couldn't help but curse in his heart, "I'm rich. I never thought that the lightning tribulation would be so powerful when stacked together. Compared to the lightning tribulation of the legacy realm. Ayo, it should be like this." Seeing that the lightning tribulation was like a huge furnace that wanted to refine his body, Xiao Hua suddenly had a trace of understanding. The absolute saint bloodline within the 13,200 million small dots in his body was once again stimulated. Under the impact of the lightning tribulation, it actually accelerated the fusion. Xiao Hua's current demonic body was unable to cope with this kind of lightning tribulation, let alone the Confucian scholar. Under the roar of the lightning tribulation, the Confucian scholar seemed to have disappeared, and there was no other sound. When the lightning clouds gradually disappeared and the lightning tribulation subsided, Xiao Hua's torn body was revealed. There were only 3 wooden statues floating in the air where the Confucian scholar had been. The wooden statues were riddled with holes by the lightning tribulation and looked like they would turn into ashes with just a slight movement. However, the 3 colored sparks in the ashes were still flickering with a faint brilliance. Huff! Xiao Hua let out a weak groan. He moved his arm with difficulty, and blood immediately burst out from his shoulder. However, Xiao Hua didn't care about the damage to his body. He grinned and still waved his hand. The soul-slaying Yuan light was released. As he chanted an incantation, the thing with a nose and eyes appeared from the sword gourd. You. Suddenly, the Zhuzi wooden statue let out the same weak voice. Then, a shadow flashed out from the wooden statue. Unfortunately, before the shadow could reach the wooden statue, the soul-slaying Yuan light turned into an arc and fell on the head of the shadow. The illusory figure waved both of his hands, and a pillar of noble qi tried to penetrate the void. However, because the illusory figure was too weak, he couldn't control the noble qi at all. Taking advantage of this perfect opportunity, the spirit-slaying vital light flashed between the illusory figure's head, and the illusory figure immediately split from the middle. Boom! At the same time, the green-robed Xiao Hua flew over from afar and released the Kunlun mirror. The remaining shadow was once again destroyed by the 3-colored pillar of light. Come in. Xiao Hua still didn't feel at ease. He released his mind and swept up the soul of the shadow that was about to enter the cycle of reincarnation. With the help of the origin power of the underworld, he took it into the yin side of the space. Phew! Sensing that the soul of the scholar had been taken into the space, Xiao Hua let out a long sigh of relief. Looking around, he saw that the dozens of first tribulation scattered nascent souls were now standing quietly in the air. Xiao Hua understood that these first tribulation scattered nascent souls were different from first tribulation scattered immortals. Their strength was at most at the initial stage of the spirit severing stage. Although their strength couldn't compare to that of a scattered immortal, they had more chances to pass the Mahayana stage lightning tribulation. Congratulations, fellow Taoist. Xiao Hua smiled and bowed. Many thanks, fellow Taoist. Although these dozens of scattered nascent souls weren't Xiao Hua's doppelgangers, they were still controlled by Xiao Hua. Hihi, fellow Taoists, please come back. Let's comprehend the great Tao together. Xiao Hua patted his forehead and dozens of lightning bolts rushed out from his lower dantian. Each of them led a scattered nascent soul and took them into his body. Immediately, Xiao Hua swept up the 3 already tattered wooden statues and flew to the ancestral shrine of the 3 families. When he entered the ancestral shrine with Once, who still hadn't woken up, Zhu Cheng and Zun Qing hurriedly greeted him and asked, "Benefactor, what happened?" Once, The novel The Legend of the Cultivation God will have more fresh content on the official WeChat platform. At the same time, there will be a 100% chance of drawing a big gift for everyone. Open WeChat now, click the plus sign at the top right to add friend, search for the public account Qdred and follow it. Hurry up. -13. Chapter 3867. A cultivator entered the ancestral shrine by borrowing his former body. This has nothing to do with the past. Xiao Hua was currently extremely weak, so he made a long story short. This cultivator has already been killed by this Xiao. As for who he is, this Xiao also doesn't know. If I'm not mistaken, he should be related to a scholarly family. Then, he deserves to die. How could Zhu Cheng not understand? Since this scholarly family was able to chase him to this place, this scholarly family must be one of the 3 scholarly families that persecuted the 3 families. They might even be the main culprit. Since this scholarly cultivator was able to borrow his former body, this scholarly cultivator's strength was far beyond his own. Even if he knew, it would be useless. However, there was still hatred in his heart, so he said in a low voice. Xiao Hua placed the tattered wooden statue on the sacrificial table and said with some regret, "It's a pity that the true enlightenment of Heavenly Book was also destroyed." At this point, Xiao Hua's eyes lit up and he said with a smile, "If possible, I would like to ask the 3 of you to work hard." "What's going on? Is this the ancestral shrine?" When did I enter the ancestral shrine?" After being awakened by Zun Qing, Zhong Shou frowned and pinched his aching head. He looked left and right and whispered in astonishment. "Ancestor." Zhu Cheng didn't answer Zhong Shou's question. Instead, he knelt down in front of the wooden statue and prayed. Zun Qing naturally echoed him. Zhong Shou didn't dare to neglect and also recited what seemed to be familiar words. After the 3 finished praying, a 3-colored light flashed on the sacrificial table and another true enlightenment of Heavenly Book appeared. "Good." Xiao Hua clapped and said with a smile, "The sage's words are indeed trustworthy. This Xiao thanks you." Xiao Hua waved his hand and the true enlightenment of Heavenly Book fell into his hand. However, this time, there was no abnormality. After Xiao Hua opened the true enlightenment of Heavenly Book and looked at it for a moment, his face couldn't help but reveal an expression of surprise. "So that's how it is. Is this real?" Xiao Hua closed the true enlightenment of Heavenly Book and put it into the space. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the wooden statue while secretly pondering. After a while, Zhu Cheng asked in a low voice, "Benefactor, is there anything wrong?" Zhu Cheng, Zun Qing, Zung. Xiao Hua moved his gaze away from the wooden statue, looked at the 3 people, and said word by word, "The true explanation of the Heavenly Book is just a guess. It's a strange sign that the 3 saints, Zhu Zi, Zun Zi, and Zheng Zi, discovered when they were comprehending the ancient secret. This might be a mystery of heaven and earth, or it might be the true essence of Confucian cultivation. However, they still couldn't find the truth. Therefore, by telling you the secrets inside, I am not only not helping you, but also pushing you into the abyss of death. And the guesses of the 3 literary saints can be realized by this Xiao. This Xiao is also looking forward to seeing if the guesses of the 3 literary saints are true." Xiao Hua continued, "Therefore, this Xiao wants to take away the items within the 3 wooden statues according to the records of the Heavenly Book true explanation." "Yes, I have no objections." Zhu Cheng immediately replied, "When I gave the bone to Benefactor, the things in the ancestral hall already belonged to Benefactor. So did the 2 of us." Zun Qing and Zheng Zi hastily replied. Xiao Hua said somewhat awkwardly, "If the wooden statues of the 3 saints were in good condition, this Xiao would have taken them, but now, if this Xiao takes them, these wooden statues will immediately turn into ashes, so this Xiao is in a bit of a dilemma. Benefactor, please take them." Zhu Cheng looked at Zun Qing and Zheng Zi, then said to Xiao Hua with a smile, The voices and smiles of the three ancestors have already been engraved in our hearts. These wooden statues are just a kind of sustenance. Now, these wooden statues are even more tattered. We feel even more uncomfortable looking at them. Presumably, Benefactor also understands that compared to these wooden statues, the prosperity of our three clans' descendants is more important. Good. Hearing this, Xiao Hua didn't hesitate. He patted his forehead, for colored Qi rushed out and covered the three wooden statues. Then, Xiao Hua didn't release the 6 cauldrons, he just let the 6 cauldrons' qi flow out slightly from his middle dantian. Woo woo. A faint sound of wind came out from the wooden statues. 3 red, yellow and blue qi, which were smaller than the tip of a needle, transformed into sparks and flew out from the wooden statues, following the 4 colored qi into Xiao Hua's middle dantian. Hong! As the 3 sparks fell into Xiao Hua's middle dantian, it seemed that the endless noble qi in the void condensed into a small qi pillar and fell into Xiao Hua's middle dantian. The 4 colored qi immediately overflowed with brilliance. Countless colors were born in the middle dantian. At the same time, the 6 cauldrons that had just been moved into Xiao Hua's middle dantian from the void also let out an extremely loud rumbling sound. They still transformed into huge cauldrons. 6 streaks of qi rushed out from the 6 cauldrons and danced around the qi that was constantly changing colors. One after another, incomplete images were born in the flowing light. These images were either mountains, rivers, the land, or the people. But no matter what the images were, the people or things in them were vivid and lifelike, as if they were full of vitality. Qi. Living qi. The qi that makes people live. Is this the true essence of Confucian cultivation? Is this red, yellow, and blue innate qi the legendary heaven soul that no one has ever seen before? Xiao Hua sensed the changes in his middle dantian and secretly muttered in his heart, but if I want to know the truth inside, the first thing I have to do is to find the last qi and gather all 9 cauldron. Only when the heaven soul and earth soul are complete can the qi give birth to human qi. That's right, if you think about it carefully, isn't the 3-colored innate qi the soul of the beginning of the world? Moreover, the 3 colors also correspond to the 3 souls of people. As for the earth soul, it's not the so-called 9 cauldrons, but the qi or dragon qi contained in the 9 cauldrons. These qi were born from the earth. Isn't it called the 9 souls because it corresponds to the 7 souls of people? Of course, these names were all given by Confucian saints, and the reason for naming them was also related to the human race. These vague connections were not too out of Xiao Hua's expectations. But what made Xiao Hua the most surprised was that the essence of Confucian cultivation was actually qi. This qi was not innate qi, not noble qi, nor innate qi, but human qi, that breath of qi that gave people vitality. If Zhuzi, Zunzi, and Zhengzi, these 3 saints' guesses were correct, then the direction of cultivation of all Confucian cultivators in the entire hidden immortal continent was wrong. A breath of qi of a living person. Xiao Hua sighed with emotion. I don't know how many legends and stories have this kind of miraculous description, but as long as a lucky person, even if they have already become bones, once they meet an immortal pill can make the bones grow flesh, and a breath of immortal qi can make the person come back to life. Therefore, people in the secular world all want to cultivate to become an immortal. But if you cultivate for a long time, you will know, not to mention that there are more and more mysteries in the world, it's impossible to have an immortal pill that can make the bones grow flesh, and that breath of immortal qi that can make the person come back to life definitely doesn't exist in the world. Making the person come back to life involves too many secrets of the heavenly Tao, the soul, reincarnation, the underworld, and so on. Any one of them is not something a cultivator can easily come into contact with. The so-called resurrection is nothing but a beautiful legend of the ignorant. Previously, this Xiao really didn't believe that the so-called immortals could have such great magical power, but if the 3 saints of literature's guesses are correct, according to the explanation of the true explanation of Heavenly Book, cultivating the 5 qis unifying one's origin, it's really possible to reach the realm of 3 flowers at one's prominence. Using the qi in the middle dantian, it's not necessarily impossible to bring the dead back to life. What a pity. Everything was just the guesses of the 3 literary saints. Even when they reached the realm of ascension, they still couldn't comprehend anything. They only left behind the 3 Xiantian Qi fire seeds that they obtained by chance, waiting for fate to bring them back. The 3 saints of literature naturally hoped that the 3 saints of literature would be able to comprehend the mysteries of the world, but unfortunately, they didn't know that they were suppressing the clone of the Judge of Hell, and there were too many entanglements of life and death in it. Not only did it cause the 3 clans' descendants to almost go extinct, but it also caused the secret of the true explanation of Heavenly Book to disappear in the dust of time. Now, it's all for nothing. When he thought of this, Xiao Hua sighed again. An indescribable understanding came from the hand of karma in the space. From meeting the waiter in Jinghua City, to meeting the Zhu family and obtaining the silk, to obtaining the first heavenly book of tortoiseshell and the heart of heaven from the space that was about to collapse underground, to meeting the ghost cultivator Huang Yi in Tianmen Mountain, to meeting Ji-Man of Hutu Stockade in Million Meng Mountains, to obtaining the second heavenly book of tortoiseshell and the heart of heaven, to obtaining the true explanation of heavenly book and the 3 innate qi kindling. Everything seemed to be pushed by a big hand, allowing him to swim along an inexplicable path in the river of karma. Although Xiao Hua was still not sure whether he could successfully cultivate the true explanation of Heavenly Book, Xiao Hua faintly felt that even if the true explanation of Heavenly Book was wrong, it still allowed him to gradually unveil the most mysterious veil in the world, allowing him to see the true face of the Heavenly Tao one step further. Boom boom boom. In the space, whether it was the yang side or the yin side, violent rumbling sounds came again. The entire space expanded again under the hand of karma, and strands of invisible karma gradually wrapped around everyone in the space, including all the souls. Good. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and said with a smile, if I have enough magic power, I can really foresee karma. Benefactor? Xiao Hua's voice had just faded when Zhu Cheng asked timidly, you're back? Oh, not good. Xiao Hua suddenly woke up and hurriedly looked at Zhu Cheng. Zhu Cheng, what did you see? What did I see? Zhu Cheng was a little confused. His eyes turned quickly, and he answered tentatively, Benefactor suddenly disappeared 3 days ago, and today, Benefactor suddenly reappeared. I didn't see anything. Oh, very good. When Xiao Hua heard this, he unconsciously let out a sigh of relief and said with a smile, I suddenly remembered that I had some things to deal with, so I hurriedly went out. It's nothing. Let's go out now. -13. Chapter 3868. Zhu Cheng was surprised at Xiao Hua's disappearance, but he immediately understood. He thought that Xiao Hua was going to deal with the Confucian cultivator who occupied Zeng's body, so he immediately shut his mouth. Let's go. Xiao Hua smiled and looked around the ancestral shrine. The wall that was broken by the Confucian cultivator had already been restored. Benefactor, please go first. Zeng heard Zun Qing's words when Xiao Hua was comprehending the karma law, so he knew that he had almost ruined something big. Now he was very careful. Xiao Hua looked at the fatty and smiled. Zeng, it's already the year of the disaster, how can you still be so fat? Anyone who sees you won't think that your family background is bad. Hee hee. Zeng smiled and said jokingly, this little one will gain weight even if I drink cold water. This little one also told my wife that if she and her dog are hungry, they can eat this little one's flesh. They definitely won't starve to death. Ha ha ha. Xiao Hua laughed. Zhu Cheng and Zun Qing also laughed. Zeng's cautious heart suddenly relaxed. Xiao Hua finished laughing and pointed at the vermilion door. This Xiao wants to go first, but this ancestral shrine is the ancestral shrine of your 3 families. This Xiao can't go out. Yes, this little one was wrong. Zeng woke up and quickly walked a few steps. Zhu Cheng and Zun Qing naturally followed him. The 3 of them gently pushed the vermilion door and it slowly opened. After leaving the ancestral shrine, Xiao Hua put away the genealogy book and silk. Sure enough, the ancestral shrine slowly shrank and gradually disappeared. Xiao Hua was not surprised and brought the 3 of them out of the ground. It was a sunny day on the ground. Xiao Hua glanced at Zun Qing and said, Zun Qing, you go back home first. Bring Zun Mi and the other Zun family disciples to Zhu family village. This Xiao has something to tell you in detail. Seeing that Xiao Hua did not return the genealogy book to him, Zun Qing vaguely knew what Xiao Hua wanted to say. He nodded and left. Seeing Zun Qing leave, Xiao Hua released his divine sense again and looked at the situation of the three towns. He smiled and said, Zhu Cheng, the Zhu clan is indeed worthy of being a descendant of a famous clan. To be able to pacify the three towns in 3 days, this Xiao is very impressed. I don't dare. Zhu Cheng didn't dare to show any arrogance on his face. He bowed and said, everything depends on benefactor's food and benefactor's divine abilities. If it weren't for benefactor, this 1,000 miles of wilderness would have become a ghost prison. That's why our hard work is nothing. Perhaps. Xiao Hua smiled and said, let's go. After working hard for a few days, I can finally taste the Zhu family's famous tea again. Yes, this one will definitely personally brew tea for benefactor. Zhu Cheng was overjoyed. He urged the cloud to accompany Xiao Hua to Zhu Jiao village. At this moment, the Zhu clan manor was rather quiet. Other than a few family guards, some of the Zhu clan's disciples with high cultivation were outside busying themselves with disaster relief. Zhu Cheng originally wanted to send a message to have these people come back, but thinking that Xiao Hua was most concerned about the lives of millions of villagers, he didn't send a message. He personally invited Xiao Hua to sit at the head of the table and personally boiled water to make tea for Xiao Hua. The women of the Zhu clan manor knew that the head of the Zhu clan was back, and they were all happy. Some sensible women even carried Zhu Cheng's youngest son, Zhu Yi. Xiao Hua had no choice but to give some elixirs to them. He also took out a drop of spirit awakening fluid and let Zhu Yi take it. When he saw his youngest son fall asleep, there was no change in Xiao Hua's eyes. Zhu Cheng knew that if there was no accident, the Zhu clan would have another great scholar in the future. Alas, this junior thanks benefactor. Zhu Cheng sighed and raised his teacup. This junior thanks Zhenren Xiao on behalf of my ancestors. Haha, you're welcome. Xiao Hua raised his teacup and said with a smile, I've always believed that God is watching what people do. As long as you do things honestly and behave yourself, all your efforts will always be rewarded. Even if I don't come, others will come. God will reward your Zhu clan, Zun clan, and Zeng clan. After drinking a few mouthfuls of tea, Xiao Hua looked at Zeng and asked, Zeng, it seems that you and Goa have never taken elixirs, right? Yes. Zeng hurriedly got up. First, this junior doesn't know how to take the elixir. Second, if we can't see the sun on the second day, taking the elixir will be useless. Therefore, this junior doesn't dare to let Goa take it. Bring Goa here. You take the elixir with him. Xiao Hua ordered. Benefactor, please wait a moment. Zhu Cheng hurriedly got up and went out to ask the servants to bring Goa and Zeng's wife here. There was no special danger in taking the elixir to break the curse. After Xiao Hua ordered them to take the elixir, Zhu Cheng and several servants of the Zhu clan skillfully guarded Zeng and Goa. Xiao Hua was relieved. Then Xiao Hua thought of something and walked out of the hall to the courtyard. Seeing that the place was big enough, he waved his hand and took out the mountain and river seal. A cloud flew out of the mountain and river seal, and the flying shuttle that was previously stored in the Yuang Ghost Cave landed in the courtyard. When the flying shuttle appeared, the Confucian scholars inside looked at the scorching sun in the sky and felt as if they could see the sun again. The Confucian scholar surnamed Song didn't have time to put away the flying shuttle. He bowed first and said, Junior Zhuoyang Song Zhixiong greets Senior. Thank you for saving my life. Junior Fengming Liu Jiao greets Senior. The group of cultivators didn't dare to be negligent. They all flew out of the flying shuttle and respectfully saluted Xiao Hua, thanking him for saving their lives. Ian, get up. Xiao Hua looked at these vigorous young Confucian cultivators and said with a smile, You are good friends of Zhu Xiong and Yu Zhongquan. Moreover, you are willing to accompany them even though you know that the ghost cave is dangerous. This kind of character is really a model for the younger generation of Confucian cultivators. This old man only needed to lift a finger to save you. Don't worry too much. Senior, please give us a name. Song Zhixiong respectfully said, Senior saved this junior. This junior doesn't even know Senior's name. How can this junior have the face to see others? This old man. Dao sect's Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and didn't hide anything. Dao sect's Xiao Hua? Song Zhixiong and the others were slightly stunned. They didn't realize at first, but after a moment, someone in the crowd exclaimed, Xiao. Daoist Xiao? Senior is Daoist Xiao Hua of Black Wind Mountain? Hearing the 3 words Black Wind Mountain, all the Confucian cultivators woke up. Half of them had a change in expression. Although these cultivators were young, they were all from Confucian cultivator families. They were very familiar with the grudges between Buddhism and Confucianism. Although the Zhou clan had declined and was besieged by other clans, the Zhou clan was still a scholarly clan, one that had produced a sage like Master Zhou. These scholarly cultivators felt that this was unfair, and since they shared the same ideals as Zhu Xiong, it was natural for them to befriend Zhu Xiong. If Xiao Hua was an ordinary Daoist cultivator and had saved their lives, befriending Xiao Hua wouldn't be a big deal. However, Xiao Hua was a Daoist cultivator of the Immortal Palace and had a fierce reputation. Although the legendary Xiao Hua was not the same as the Xiao Hua in front of them, the huge shadow of the Immortal Palace was covering the sky. It was inevitable that these Confucian cultivators would have obstacles in their hearts. Xiao Hua looked at these younger Confucian cultivators with interest and didn't say much. After a moment of surprise, Song Zhixiong's eyes turned and he hurriedly asked, Senior Xiao, I don't know, did Zhu Xiong and Yu Zhongquan escape the tribulation? Alas, when I arrived, it was already too late. Xiao Hua shook his head slightly and sighed, I could only save Yu Zhongquan. Zhu Xiong had already fallen. How sad. Song Zhixiong lamented, I don't know where Brother Zhu's morning hall is. This junior wants to go and pay his respects. Oh, I don't know. Xiao Hua replied, wait a moment. I will call Zhu Cheng over and ask him. Zhu Cheng came out. When he saw the flying shuttle and everyone, he was slightly stunned. After asking a few questions, he immediately understood. Of course, the young Confucian cultivators were also extremely surprised by Zhu Cheng's resemblance to Zhu Xiong. However, although the two looked similar, their behavior was completely different. After a while, everyone got used to it. Zhu Cheng already felt guilty about Zhu Xiong's death. Thinking that these people had gone through life and death with Zhu Xiong, his face became amiable. He immediately led these Confucian cultivators to Zhu Xiong's morning hall. Xiao Hua naturally didn't need to go, so he returned to the hall and sat down. His mind entered the yin side of the space. When Jade Archive Xiao Hua saw the changes in the yin side of the space, he couldn't help but be shocked. A towering tree extended out from the nether blood sea. It was brimming with vitality as it pierced into the sky. When it reached a height of 10,000 feet, countless branches extended out from various parts of the tree. They separately extended to the surroundings of the nether blood sea, covering an area of several tens of thousands of miles. Within the sea of blood, countless rays of bloody light rushed into the tree from the roots that were deeply embedded in the sea of blood. The tree roots in the sea of blood covered the entire sea of blood. They were several times larger than the tree trunk and crown above the sea of blood. What was even more strange was that there were 2 huge roots that connected the 2 continents through the sea of blood. The Netherworld lotus and Netherworld bamboo were growing on those continents. On the Netherworld lotus and Netherworld bamboo, the light of Xueshua's helpless soul faintly flowed into the Netherworld fruit along the roots. This is the Netherworld fruit's roots from before. Jade Archive Xiao Hua's gaze swept over and immediately understood the origin of this huge tree. When Xiao Hua sent the Netherworld fruit's roots into the yin side of the space, it wasn't this big. Even when Xiao Hua entered the Nether Wang Ghost Cave, the Netherworld fruit's roots didn't change much. However, after the wandering souls of the 7 ghost caves entered, the Netherworld fruit's roots crazily grew. In just a few hours, it had grown to such a majestic aura. At this time, on the Netherworld fruit tree, there were many things that looked like sparkling dewdrops condensing. Within these dewdrops, wisps of smoke-like souls slowly circulated. The bloody light of the Netherworld sea of blood entered these dewdrops through the Netherworld fruit's roots, nourishing these souls. What was special was that at the place where the Netherworld fruit tree protruded from the Netherworld sea of blood, there was a fist-sized ball of light emitting a faint brilliance. Zhu Xiong's soul was hibernating within. Above Zhu Xiong's soul, there were many other souls that also flowed out, occupying the main branches of the netherworld fruit tree. However, these souls were much smaller than Zhu Xiong's. They were the wandering souls that Xiao Hua first used the parameter realm to absorb into the space. -13. Chapter 3869. Good. Jade Archive. Xiao Hua looked at everything in front of him and praised. Although Zhu Xiong was cowardly and indecisive when he was alive, his filial piety was unparalleled in the world. He even sacrificed himself for the lives of millions of people. Now that he has entered the yin side of this space, he is one of the first few souls to enter the underworld fruit tree. In the future, he will be of great use. Where is that Confucian cultivator who sneak-attacked I? Jade Archive. Xiao Hua was still thinking about the Confucian cultivator who sneak-attacked him. He wanted to see what kind of background this Confucian cultivator had, but when he looked up, the Confucian cultivator's soul had already settled in one of the underworld fruits. Jade Archive. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and smiled. Entering the underworld fruit tree is another life. In this life, it has nothing to do with him. I have disturbed him for no reason. It is not appropriate. Let's forget about it. And you also come here. Jade Archive. Xiao Hua said and raised his hand to grab. Thousands of miles away, a huge ghost wearing official robes was pulled out from the depths of the netherworld blood sea. This ghost was different from the one Xiao Hua saw before, but the official robes were exactly the same. The bloody light on the official robes became thicker and thicker, and wisps of bloody red constantly rushed into the official robes from the netherworld blood sea. Jiu Momo. The ghost landed in front of Jade Archive. Xiao Hua and hurriedly knelt down, respectfully saying something. Although Jade Archive. Xiao Hua did not understand, when it reached his ears, he understood that it was begging the master of the underworld to spare his life. Chempage. Jade Archive. Xiao Hua extended a finger and pointed at the ghost's body. Boom. With a soft sound, the ghost turned into countless fireflies. As the fireflies danced in the air, some thick black crystal threads fell onto Jade Archive. Xiao Hua's finger. Even more fireflies fell into the blood sea and disappeared without a trace. The black crystal threads merged into Xiao Hua's body. Xiao Hua's body shook violently and he hurriedly closed his eyes to think. After a long time, he opened his eyes and looked at the dark side of the space. He didn't say anything, but his eyes were filled with dread. After pondering for a moment, Xiao Hua raised his hand and flicked it. A strand of crystal thread flew into Zhu Xiong's soul. After that, Xiao Hua raised his hand and made a grabbing motion. The soul hooking brush also appeared out of thin air and fell into Zhu Xiong's soul. But the Jade Archive. Xiao Hua said, Zhu Xiong, I entrust you with a heavy responsibility. I hope that after your soul matures, you can use the soul hooking pen to eliminate the grievances of the human world, and use the book of life and death to record the joys and sorrows of the human world. You are worthy of being an infernal judge of hell. Seeing that the soul-capturing pen has fallen into Zhu Xiong's soul, Xiao Hua understands that Xue has used the power of her soul to open the yin and yang of the space and obtained the power of the yin side of the space. To a certain extent, she is the mother of the yin side of the space. She can be compared with Hutu god who has transformed into the 9 underworlds. Everything in the yin side of the space can only grow after her soul matures. The souls on the underworld fruit tree can only awaken after she wakes up. The order of the 6 paths of reincarnation in the yin side of the space must be established by Xue. Immediately, Xiao Hua stood in front of the netherworld lotus and looked at Xue's soul. He once again checked the cultivation progress of the stone statue and prepared to leave the yin side of the space. Xiao Hua suddenly raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "No. I still underestimated the power of the heavenly Tao. As long as the heavenly Tao exists in this world, it doesn't care about the loss of a person or soul. Even if Xue doesn't control the yin side of the space, under the heavenly Tao, extreme yin must be yang and extreme yang must be yin. The cycle of yin and yang already exists in I's space. Without Xue, this cycle is a kind of nature. With Xue, this cycle is a kind of order. Previously, there was no living person in the yang side of the space, so there might not be life and death. Now that there is life and death, there must be a corresponding reincarnation on the yin side. Hehe, I am really looking forward to it. I can't wait to see the mystery of reincarnation. Xiao Hua's mind withdrew from the yin side of the space. He originally wanted to check on Yu Zhongquan's injuries, but at this time, Zhu Cheng returned to the hall with Song Zixiong and several other Confucian cultivators. Xiao Hua looked at the several Confucian cultivators with interest and said with a smile, "It seems that this old man's reputation is still too fierce. Only a few of you have come to say goodbye." Song Zixiong said with a smile, "Senior, don't blame them. Their temperaments are good. We have all gone through some tests before, so we can trust them. It's just that they are not alone. They all have their own families behind them." Even this junior thought about it for a long time before coming to say goodbye to senior. After all, the longer we stay with senior, the more likely our families will be punished by the immortal palace. This is our fear. Please forgive us. Hehe, in that case, this old man understands your intentions. Xiao Hua said with a smile, "No need to be so polite." "Thank you, senior." Song Zixiong stood up and said respectfully, "But in this junior's opinion, senior is this junior's savior. Even if this junior thanks senior a few times, it's still within the etiquette of us Confucian cultivators. Presumably, the immortal palace won't punish us, right? Otherwise, wouldn't this junior become a heartless and unrighteous person?" "Yes, we all think so." The several Confucian cultivators behind Song Zixiong also said so. "Very good." Xiao Hua nodded. "This way, Zhu Cheng and Yu Zhongquan didn't get to know you in vain." Song Zixiong raised his eyes to look at Zhu Cheng, then turned to Xiao Hua and said, "Senior, in this junior's opinion, senior is far from the kind of vicious person who swallows 100,000 immortal soldiers. Moreover, you are more like this junior's granduncle. Presumably, there are some misunderstandings about senior's reputation in the immortal palace." "Hehe, it doesn't matter. It's already been spread around. What else can this old man say?" Xiao Hua smiled and waved his hand, replying disapprovingly. Song Zixiong slightly bit his lips and said, "Junior knows of an opportunity that can let senior make friends with many Confucian cultivators. Perhaps it can help senior wash off this fierce reputation." "Forget it. This old man really doesn't care about this." Xiao Hua still shook his head. "You all should hurry back." "Oh, right. Bring your Chenkuan bags. This old man has some food. If we encounter any disaster along the way, we can help." Song Zixiong and the others were naturally very shocked. They had never seen a cultivator who valued the lives of the ordinary people of the hidden immortal continent so much. After they received the Chenkuan bags, Song Zixiong said again, "Senior Xiao, this junior feels that senior should really communicate more with our Confucian cultivators. This junior really hasn't seen many benevolent cultivators like you." Xiao Hua was just about to wave his hand, when Zhu Cheng at the side said with a smile, "Nephew Zixiong, what is the opportunity you mentioned? Can you say it clearly?" "Uncle Zhu, my Song clan knows that Jing Province's Chu clan has invited all the Confucian cultivators in the world to go to the Fiend God Blood Pool in Yang Province to find the Fiend God Chess. If Senior Xiao can go to the Fiend God Blood Pool, wouldn't he be able to make friends with even more Confucian cultivators? And let others see Daoist Master Xiao's benevolent true face?" "Yen, nephew's words are quite reasonable. However, whether to go or not, Daoist Master Xiao will make his choice. Nephew, you should return home as soon as possible, don't let your family worry." Zhu Cheng nodded and said, "Although Jin is no longer here, if nephew has any matters, you can come to my Zhu clan. This old man will help as much as possible." "Yes." Song Zixiong and the others hurriedly bowed and said, "Junior will take his leave." After Song Zixiong and the others were sent away, Zhu Cheng turned around and looked at Xiao Hua, saying in a low voice, "Benefactor, this one feels that Benefactor should still go to the Fiend God Blood Pool." "Oh, why?" Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows and asked curiously. Previously, this one advised Benefactor that if necessary, it's best to reveal your cultivation. This Fiend God Blood Pool is a good opportunity. If Benefactor can suppress the scholarly cultivators inside, Benefactor's strength will be known by everyone in the world. Apart from the Immortal Palace, there will definitely be even more scholarly cultivator clans that will take Benefactor seriously. Zhu Cheng smiled and said, moreover, Jing Province's Chu clan is a legalist clan, and they don't get along well with the Immortal Palace's militarists. Benefactor can make friends with legalists and borrow their strength to resist the Immortal Palace. Of course, at that time, apart from legalists, there will definitely be even more scholarly cultivator clans that will take Benefactor seriously. While they are using Benefactor, Benefactor can naturally use them. This is the so-called alliance. Xiao Hua nodded and replied thoughtfully. That's right. This is the so-called alliance. Zhu Cheng replied, according to this one's knowledge, Jing Province's Chu clan has coveted the Fiend God blood pool in Gun Province for many years. They've tried to enter several times, but were unable to succeed each time. Now that the Chu clan has sent out an invitation again, there will definitely be many scholarly cultivator clans that will go to the Fiend God blood pool. This is the perfect strategy for Benefactor to use. After replying, Zhu Cheng didn't say anything else and quietly waited for Xiao Hua to think. Xiao Hua's destination this time was naturally the North Sea Dragon Palace. He had temporarily arrived at Zhu Village, and now that he had to turn back, Gun Province was also a place he had to pass through. Zhu Cheng's words were indeed reasonable, but Xiao Hua still hadn't considered clearly how he would appear in front of the scholarly cultivators. After all, he was a Daoist cultivator that the Immortal Palace was suppressing. If they wanted to kill him as soon as they saw him, wouldn't he be wasting his efforts for nothing? In addition, the reason Xiao Hua hesitated was that when he first arrived at the hidden Immortal Continent, he also received an invitation from Chu clan's Chu Muhuan. However, Xiao Hua didn't know whether Chu Muhuan's invitation was this Fiend God blood pool or not. While he was hesitating, Zun clan's Zun Qing brought Zun Mi over. Zheng Zheng and Zheng Yang also broke the curse and came over to thank him. Xiao Hua saw that the time was right and ordered Zhu Cheng to call back the Zhu clan's disciples that went out to provide relief. When everyone had gathered, Xiao Hua stood up and looked at Zhu Shi's portrait. He waved his hand and took out the three clans' genealogy records. He roughly explained the matter of the three clans' ancestral shrines. Finally, he said, this matter was originally a private matter between your three clans, so this old man couldn't interfere. However, since this old man received benefits from the three literary sages, I had no choice but to speak up. This old man hopes that Zhu clan, Zheng clan, and Zun clan can become one family in the future. No matter when, you can see each other as family. The relationship between three clans is better than one. -13. Chapter 3870. We will follow Daoist Master's words. From today onwards, we will leave these words in our ancestral teachings. Zhu Cheng and the others hurriedly bowed. Good. Xiao Hua smiled and returned the genealogy records of the three clans. Then, he took out the other book and bone fragment that hid the silk. With a wave of his hand, he wanted to divide the book into three parts, but Xiao Hua's hand stopped. He raised his hand and the book landed in front of Zhu Cheng. He said, this item belongs to this old man, but it is closely related to your three clans' ancestral temples. Now, this old man will return this item to your clans. As for how to preserve it, you three clans can discuss among yourselves. In the future, if other Zhu family descendants come looking for this book, the Zhu family should treat them well. Many, many thanks, Benefactor. Zhu Cheng's voice trembled. He understood that this book was the most important part of opening the ancestral temple. Xiao Hua returning the book to the three families was also a generous gift. Xiao Hua glanced at the similarly excited Zun Qing and Zheng Zheng. He knew that these two families might not have the opportunity to preserve this book. However, this book was originally obtained by Xiao Hua from the Zhu family of the Xiaoyu continent. Moreover, the two families now relied on the Zhu family, so it was natural for the Zhu family to preserve this book. Alright, there's also this bone fragment. Xiao Hua finally flicked the bone fragment in front of Zhu Cheng and said with a smile, this item is already useless, but it still belongs to the Zhu family. This old man should return it to the Zhu family. No. Zhu Cheng hurriedly waved his hand. Although this item is useless, others don't know. Benefactor is merciful and magnanimous, please take this item away. Moreover, this item belonged to my Zhu family's ancestor. In the future, if Benefactor's descendants and disciples have a use for my Zhu family, please come to my Zhu family with this item. My Zhu family will agree to anything. My Zeng family is the same. Zeng hurriedly said. Zun Qing also hurriedly echoed, my Zun family is the same. Ari, all right. Xiao Hua actually wanted to settle his karma with the three families here. He didn't want to be involved with them in the future. However, looking at Zhu Cheng and the others, he thought for a moment and waved his hand to take back the bone fragment. He nodded and said, in that case, this old man will also keep this item as a souvenir. Zhu Cheng and the other two were overjoyed. Just as they were about to speak, Xiao Hua's figure flickered as he soared into the air and said with a smile, this old man still has urgent matters to attend to, so I won't be staying here any longer. If fate wills it, we'll meet again in the future. Benefactor. Zhu Cheng and Zun Qing were shocked. They didn't expect Xiao Hua to leave just like that. They hurriedly flew out of the hall to block Xiao Hua, but by the time they flew out, Xiao Hua had already disappeared. Alas, Benefactor is truly a righteous person. He's the best person in the world. Zun Qing stood in the air and sighed. I've lived for so long, but this is the first time I've seen such a benevolent and righteous person. Alas, it's such a pity that such a good Daoist cultivator was regarded as a demon by the immortal palace. Zhu Cheng bowed deeply in the air and sighed. Since we have been blessed by you, we should lend you a hand. Although we don't have much power, we can help the people. Our three families will use the grain seeds that you have given us as an opportunity to help you spread your name across the world. Good. Zun Qing and the One Underground both agreed. However, as soon as they answered, the entire earth rumbled and trembled again. It was as if a large hand had lifted Shu province from the hidden immortal continent and then suddenly threw it down. Zhu Cheng was shocked when he saw this and hurriedly ordered, everyone, there will be a great disaster after the disaster. We still need to borrow the power of our benefactor to eliminate this great disaster. Let's hurry up and get started. Okay. Whether it was Zun Qing, or the old and young of Zhujiao village, they all moved, not to mention, Zhu family, Zun family, and Zeng family gradually spread Daoist Master Xiao's good name in the 9 regions due to the disaster of the hidden immortal continent and the loss of the 6 cauldrons during the chaos of the 6 regions. Xiao Hua flew out of Zhujiao village and slightly identified the direction before flying towards the North Sea. Suddenly, Long Mai Xiao Hua's urgent voice sounded, fellow Daoist, wait. I sensed the aura of the 9 cauldrons. Ah! 9 cauldrons. Zuzhu cauldrons. Xiao Hua was stunned. His figure froze in midair as he asked in a low voice in disbelief. After all, he had just obtained the true explanation of the heavenly book and the origin of metal. Xiao Hua didn't expect to be able to get more from Wuyuan County. It should be right. Long Mai Xiao Hua said with certainty, this is the aura of the Zuzhu cauldrons that I sensed from the 6 cauldrons. It should be right. There are countless great scholars in Shu province, but the most famous ones are Zhu Zi, Zeng Zi, and Zun Zi. Since the 3 sage families are all in Shu province, distributed in Wuyuan County, Jingyu County, and Fanchang County, that is to say, these 3 counties have occupied the fate of Shu province. If the Zuzhu cauldrons were not here, how could the 3 sages be born? Xiao Hua secretly nodded when he heard this. The great scholars and sages mentioned by Confucian students were, in fact, somewhat different from the great scholars and sages of Confucian cultivation. Great Confucian was an honorific title. It was the respect for the old scholars who were virtuous and learned. Sometimes, it had nothing to do with the realm of Confucian cultivation. Even an unarmed old pedant could be called a great Confucian scholar. The so-called Great Confucian family didn't necessarily have a great Confucian scholar in the Confucian realm. Instead, it referred to the fact that a great Confucian family had produced a great Confucian scholar with unique academic achievements. This wasn't something that a simple Confucian cultivator could compare with. Sages were many levels higher than great scholars. They referred to the grandmasters who founded academic schools. They were unique sages. These sages usually came from ancient times and were some leading figures. These figures were almost extinct today. It was impossible for them to appear again. Confucian cultivators actually had a saying that sages of literature were often present, but sages were not present. Literary stars were like stars, while sages were like the moon. Therefore, those who could be called sages could be counted on one's fingers. Confucius, Mencius, Laozi, and the others were sages of Confucian cultivation. Their literary names were like the brilliance of the sun for 10,000 generations. Zhuzi, Zhengzi, Zunzi, Mozi, Han Fizi, Zhuangzi, Sun Tzu, and the other sages of Confucian cultivation were like the moon illuminating the brilliant stars of literature. Fellow Daoist is right. Xiao Hua pondered for a moment. He activated the earth escape technique and entered the ground in the direction that Dragon Vein Xiao Hua pointed out. He changed his direction and said, although we passed by earlier, the aura of the Zuzhu cauldron was suppressed by the Netherworld Judge's 9 nether origin power and was difficult to detect. Now that the 9 ghost caves are not under the control of the Netherworld Judge, the aura of the Zuzhu cauldron will naturally leak out. It is normal for fellow Daoist to discover it. This is also an opportunity for us. Wuyuan County, Jingyu County, and Fancheng County are the locations of the graceful spirit bell spirit. Even the origin of metal will appear. It is normal for the Zuzhu cauldron to be here. Maybe it is because of the aura of the Zuzhu cauldron that attracted the origin of metal here. That is why the Netherworld Judge coveted it. Dragon Vein Xiao Hua replied. Hearing this, Xiao Hua was shocked. He stopped and said anxiously, if that is the case, I am afraid we cannot take away the Zuzhu cauldron. Oh, why? Dragon Vein Xiao Hua was puzzled. It is very simple. Xiao Hua replied, the 3 saints left behind instructions for the descendants of the 3 saints to guard the 3 ghost caves. In other words, the 3 saints did not know that the Zuzhu cauldron was here. Similarly, they did not know that there were 9 ghost caves here. At that time, the Zuzhu cauldron suppressed 9 ghost caves. Among these 9 ghost caves, only 3 of them were able to release the Netherworld Chi. The other 6 ghost caves were sealed by the Zuzhu cauldron. Even the Netherworld Judge had no way to come out. If we take away the Zuzhu cauldron now, wouldn't the other 6 ghost caves be unable to be suppressed? Fellow Daoist indeed has the world in his heart. He does not put his own interests above everything else. I am very impressed. Dragon Vein Xiao Hua said with a smile. However, fellow Daoist neglected something. Since the previous 6 ghost caves did not erupt, they actually appeared now. Naturally, the 9 cauldron formation has been broken. The Zuzhu cauldron is useless here. If fellow Daoist has the heart, after gathering all 9 cauldrons, you can use your great divine ability to lay out the 9 cauldron formation and gather the destiny of the 9 regions again. That is the right way, but the 9 regions 9 cauldron formation, where did you get it? Xiao Hua understood that Dragon Vein Xiao Hua was right. He could not help but ask with a bitter smile. Dragon Vein Xiao Hua said with a smile, I do not know about this. Fellow Daoist. Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua said, whoever tied the bell should untie it. In the end, the karma of the 9 regions 9 cauldron formation still lies with the Confucian cultivator clan. Only by refining innate true chi can I lay out the formation. I even feel that innate true chi is the root of Confucian cultivators. Once we master innate true chi, we master the foundation of Confucian cultivators' cultivation. Even if there is no 9 cauldron formation, we can still figure it out ourselves. Don't forget, we still have the innate divine restriction. Even so, I will go down and take a look. Xiao Hua nodded. He once again urged his body to go underground. Sure enough, the deeper he went underground, the more netherworld chi there was. It was as if the entire earth was leaking, and the netherworld chi was leaking out from the sieve-like holes. It's over there. Dragon Vein Xiao Hua pointed at a place where the netherworld chi was spiraling out from the netherworld chi and said. Xiao Hua landed and stretched out his hand to touch it. He said with a bitter smile, "I can only touch the void. There is nothing here." Even if this Shuju cauldron was discovered by others, it would not be easy to take it. The Tao of Fate is the mystery of heaven and earth. How can an ordinary person know about it? Dragon Vein, Xiao Hua said with a proud smile. Xiao Hua was not at ease. He once again escaped to the bottom of the Shuju cauldron. He looked again and found that the root of the Shuju cauldron was also overflowing with netherworld qi. He knew that the suppression power of the Shuju cauldron had already disappeared. At this time, Xiao Hua released the four-colored heaven's core and surrounded the Shuju cauldron. Then, he carefully urged the 9 flying swords to nail the Shuju cauldron. Finally, according to the secret technique of the dragon race, he urged Dragon Vein Xiao Hua to pull the Shuju cauldron out from the ground. Rumble. Wuyuan County, Jingyu County, and Fancheng County, several thousand li of the earth trembled. In this huge tremor, Xiao Hua pulled the Shuju cauldron out. This seemingly huge Shuju cauldron immediately shrunk and turned into a strange object the size of a palm. -13. Chapter 3871. Xiao Hua didn't bother to look at the Zuzhu cauldron. Instead, he looked at the ground. He saw that the overflowing netherworld qi didn't increase much because of the absence of the Zuzhu cauldron. Moreover, after the netherworld qi rushed into the ground, it was gradually dimmed by the yang qi of the hidden immortal continent. Even if it really dissipated to the ground, it wouldn't cause any harm to the people of Zuzhu. Lucky. Xiao Hua put down his worried heart and looked at the Zuzhu cauldron with joy. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of true qi and absorbed it into his middle dantian. Swish. As the Zuzhu cauldron entered his dantian, a stream of qi rushed out of the Zuzhu cauldron. This qi was like a brush that touched the previously broken image. The whole image began to overflow again, but this time the image was more vivid and more complete. Great. Xiao Hua praised. He urged his body to fly out from the ground and flew toward the North Sea again. Not to mention Xiao Hua's harvest, he flew to the North Sea to keep the appointment. In the center of the misty immortal palace, there was a magnificent vermilion palace. At first glance, this palace looked similar to the surrounding palaces, but if one looked carefully, they would find that it was much taller than the other palaces. When one flew closer, the palace was like a 10,000 feet tall mountain, making people look up to it. What was even more amazing was that all the palaces and pavilions of the immortal palace prostrated themselves around this palace, as if they were submitting and protecting it. The 9-colored clouds that overflowed above the palace were like sunlight, rain, and dew that constantly scattered in all directions, falling into various parts of the immortal palace. Every time a palace fell into the clouds, the palace would flash with a strange brilliance, and auspicious clouds would surge out from the palace, as if they were responding and thanking the palace for its kindness. In the brilliance of the clouds of this palace, there was a continuous rise and fall of palaces and pavilions. Among them, the most dazzling palace was overflowing with treasure light. Countless huge pillars of qi surged around this palace. Waves of qi rushed into the armor inscriptions everywhere in the palace. Waves of indescribable solemnity were emitted from the armor inscriptions. What was even more unbelievable was that inside the palace, there were streams of qi entangling and dancing like huge dragons. That kind of aura that could make any immortal or mortal suffocate firmly surrounded this palace. On the plaque of this palace, there were 4 ancient and powerful words written on it: Lingyun Palace. This was the center of the immortal palace, the place where the immortal emperor of the immortal palace summoned the immortal officials to discuss matters. Although the doors of the Lingyun King Palace were not closed, the entire palace was filled with purple clouds. The clouds condensed into a myriad of things and covered everything in the palace. It was impossible to see or hear anything inside the palace. Usually, the heavenly music was faintly discernible, and the peaceful atmosphere of immortal birds and fowls was long gone. 3,000 feet away from the palace, there were no palace maids or immortal officials to be seen. Even the immortal beasts and fowls were obediently avoiding them. No one dared to make a sound. This was because they knew that this was the day when the immortal emperor was discussing matters. Any untimely noise would disturb the Lingyun King Palace, and any mishap could cost them their lives. At this moment, a thunderous sound came from the entrance of the palace. Then, an immortal emperor's decree that was a few feet long and shining with purple light flew out from the clouds. A voice that faintly contained the order of the world came from the decree. Summon the princes of the Dongfang, Shimen, Nangong, and Beiming clans for questioning. As the voice fell, dozens of inscriptions on the armor appeared. These inscriptions on the armor caused the great Qi of the Lingyun King Palace to rush into the imperial edict. Roar! The imperial edict emitted an even more dazzling brilliance. 4 by and emitting a threatening aura flew out from the brilliance. Each of them stepped on the clouds under the imperial edict and ran away. After the immortal emperor's decree flew away, the clouds outside the Lingyun King Palace began to swirl. Small whirlpools rotated and returned to their original state. In just a moment, outside the Lingyun King Palace, 4 well-built young Confucian scholars stepped on the clouds and arrived. These 4 people had different temperaments, different appearances, and different clothes. However, their dignified appearances were very similar. Each of them had a graceful and luxurious smile on their faces. Brother Dongfang, greetings to you. A Confucian scholar with slightly longer cheeks and bright moon-like eyes flew half a step forward. He cupped his hands and smiled at the Confucian scholar closest to him. A few months ago, I wanted to visit you at your residence. However, I heard that you weren't at your residence. I was thinking about when to visit you these past few days. I didn't expect to see you at the Lingyun King Palace today. This is really a joy for me. The Confucian scholar named Dongfang's face was as bright as the moon. His eyes flashed with yellow light. When he heard this Confucian scholar speak, he hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "Oh, so it's Brother Shimen. A few months ago, I was indeed not at my residence because I had some matters to attend to. I'm sorry to disappoint you. However, today is just right. Not only is Brother Shimen here, but Brother Nangong and Brother Beiming are also here. The princes of the 4 clans are all here. After the questioning at the Lingyun King Palace, we can have a small gathering. Greetings, Brother Dongfang and Brother Shimen." As they spoke, a square-faced Confucian scholar with fiery red eyes and a chubby Confucian scholar with a round face flew over and greeted them at the same time. The 4 of them greeted each other. The Dongfang heir looked up at the majestic Lingyun King Palace and asked in a low voice, "For brothers, may I know the reason why the immortal emperor suddenly summoned us today?" The Nangong heir shrugged and glanced at the other 3 people. He said helplessly, I don't know. However, since the princes of the 4 clans are all here, I'm afraid there's something important. Since we're in front of the Lingyun King Palace, we can't recklessly guess the emperor's intentions. We'll know once we enter the palace." The Beiming heir replied indifferently. However, the 4 of them looked at each other with a faint tacit understanding. It was as if they had already sensed something. "That's right." The Shimen heir nodded and took out a decree from his bosom. He raised it with both hands and said respectfully to the Lingyun King Palace, "Your servant Shimen Cheonghan of the Shimen family kowtows in salute to His Majesty the Immortal Emperor." Seeing Shimen Cheonghan suddenly take out a decree and kowtow, the Dongfang heir's eyes flashed with anger. The Dongfang, Shimen, Nangong, and Beiming families were the 4 great clans. They had existed even longer than the Kong, Meng, and Sun clans. The Dongfang family was the head of the 4 great clans. Usually, when the 4 clans gathered together, the Dongfang family would always be the first to speak. This was an unspoken tacit understanding between them. Shimen Cheonghan's sudden opening of his mouth was understandable in terms of the order of everyone's speech, but in terms of tacit understanding, it was a form of provocation. Not only was the heir of the Dongfang family enraged, even the heirs of the Nangong family and the Beiming family were slightly taken aback. However, a trace of schadenfreude appeared in their eyes as they stood by the side, waiting to see how the heir of the Dongfang family would react. However, the show they wanted to see didn't play out. The Dongfang heir took out a decree and respectfully raised it up high. He raised his voice and said, Dongfang Heir Dongfang Huiyun kowtows in salute to His Majesty the Immortal Emperor. Seeing that Dongfang Huiyun didn't cause trouble, the Nangong and Beiming heirs looked at each other and took out their decrees at the same time. They respectfully raised them up high and said in unison, Nangong Heir Nangong Jingyin and Beiming Heir Beiming Jiqing kowtows in salute to His Majesty the Immortal Emperor. Announce. A majestic voice was transmitted over. Vast clouds surged out of the hall door like rolling waves. They instantly wrapped around the four of them. When the clouds disappeared, the figures of the four of them had also disappeared. The clouds rapidly retracted and landed in front of the Lingyun treasure palace. It was the clouds that had crashed into the palace door. Buzz. With a muffled sound, a huge whirlpool appeared. As the light flashed, the four of them were dazzled. Then, they landed under a huge dome of heaven. This was a vast sky. Above and below his feet was a boundless sea of nebulas. Between the nebulas, thousands of multicolored lights flashed brilliantly like the afterglow of dusk. And in this brilliance of light and shadow, mountains, rivers, and all kinds of things in the world were faintly circulating. Among these nebulas, the most eye-catching thing was an existence that resembled a blazing sun. It was a golden throne high up in the sky. This golden throne overlooked all things and was the leader of the group. An aura that seemed to be the ruler of all things surged down from the throne and covered the entire sky. At this moment, an emperor that was thousands of feet tall sat on the throne. This emperor wore a sun and moon emperor robe and a crown of heaven and earth on his head. Tens of millions of inscriptions surged around him from time to time, and the providence of hundreds of families danced wantonly like dragons. The terrifying aura on the golden throne was emitted from this emperor. The heirs of the four great clans landed in the hall and glanced at the emperor, whose appearance could not be seen clearly, on the golden throne. They hurriedly bowed again and said, "Your humble subjects greet your majesty. Rise." Although the four princes didn't know how far away the immortal emperor was, when the immortal emperor spoke, the roaring providence dragon immediately froze and the surging inscriptions disappeared. The brilliance on the golden throne carried a majestic voice and landed on the four of them. "Thank you, your majesty." The four of them rose at the same time and stood there with their heads lowered. They didn't dare to say a word. "How many years have you been in the celestial palace?" the immortal emperor asked. Dongfang Huiyun rolled his eyes and respectfully replied, "Your servant has been in the celestial palace for 10 years. Your servant has been in the celestial palace for 9 years and 8 months. Your servant has been in the celestial palace for 9 years and 8 months. Your servant has been in the celestial palace for 7 years. The other 3 aristocratic family members also answered in a well-behaved manner. "Yes, Dongfang Huiyun has been in the celestial palace for 10 years, and more than 3,000 years have passed in the hidden immortal continent." The immortal emperor nodded and said, "Does Dongfang Huiyun miss the hidden immortal continent?" Dongfang Huiyun smiled and said, "It would be a lie if I didn't miss it. However, your servant has enjoyed an immortal lifespan in the celestial palace and is also envied by everyone in the clan. Your servant is grateful for your majesty's grace." -13. Chapter 3872. You do have longevity, but it's hard for your cultivation to improve. Minister Dongfang, you're already a literature saint. If you were on the hidden immortal continent, you might already be a literature star. This is also the disadvantage of the immortal palace. Immortal Emperor's tone was comforting, but his voice was like rolling thunder. "Your Majesty is joking." Dongfang Huiyun didn't dare to be slow and hurriedly replied, "The righteous qi in the immortal palace is countless times denser than the hidden immortal continent. Cultivating in the immortal palace has an exceptionally solid foundation. Although I'm still a literature saint, I'm completely different from 10 years ago. And I also know that cultivating in the immortal palace will allow me to reach literature star sooner or later. But if I cultivated in the hidden immortal continent, I'm afraid I would have already been stuck at the bottleneck. Just like Dongfang Huiyun, I'm grateful for your majesty's grace." Shimon Cheunghan seized the opportunity and said, "It's my fortune to be able to cultivate in the immortal palace. Shimon Cheonghan's tone was even more humble, and he even called himself minister. Immortal Emperor nodded and asked, how long has it been since Minister Shimon contacted your family? Dongfang Huiyun saw Shimon Cheonghan interrupt again, and the Immortal Emperor's question landed on Shimon Cheonghan. She couldn't help but get angry again. Your Majesty. Shimon Cheonghan glanced at Dongfang Huiyun proudly and respectfully replied, according to the Immortal Palace's rules, I'm supposed to contact my family once a year. There's still half a month before the deadline. I should have received the message a year ago. Minister Dongfang, Minister Nangong, Minister Beiming, you too? Immortal Emperor asked. Dongfang Huiyun, Nangong Jingyin, and Beiming Jiqing hurriedly replied, Your Majesty, yes, we received the message a year ago. 1 day in the Immortal Palace is 1 year in the human world. 1 year in the Immortal Palace is 300 years in the human world. In other words, you haven't received any news from the hidden Immortal Continent for 300 years? Yes. The four replied respectfully. Immortal Emperor's tone suddenly turned cold. So you don't know the current situation of the hidden Immortal Continent? We do not know. Dongfang Huiyun and the others were surprised as they answered respectfully. However, no one dared to ask further. Since that's the case, you can go back and wait. The Immortal Emperor said indifferently, if the clan sends a message, ask more about the situation of the hidden Immortal Continent. Your 4 great clans are guarding my hidden Immortal Continent, which is the foundation of us Confucian cultivators. Don't be careless. Yes, we understand. The 4 of them bowed respectfully again and replied, we will definitely pass on this message to the clan. After the 4 of them left, a ray of light flashed in the sky of the Lingyun Treasure Palace. A dozen celestial generals wearing celestial armor appeared on the right side of the golden chair. These celestial generals were also a few thousand feet tall. The murderous aura on their bodies seemed to have materialized. The noble chi surrounding their bodies was as sharp as the sword chi. As for the left side of the golden seat, there were a few Confucian cultivators in court attire standing asymmetrically. These Confucian cultivators were of different ages, and their height and weight were also different. Although these Confucian cultivators did not have the murderous aura of the immortal general opposite them, the righteous aura that surged around them was not inferior to the immortal generals. As the righteous aura surged, a myriad of phenomena were vaguely born. These Confucian cultivators stood quietly, and their auras were extremely restrained. The person in front was an old man with white hair and beard holding a horsetail whisk. The old man frowned slightly and turned his head to look at the door of the hall, as if he was thinking about something. Tai-bai jinxing. The Immortal Emperor asked, do you think we can trust these 4 people? Your Majesty. The white-haired Tai-bai jinxing waved the horsetail whisk in his hand. He withdrew his gaze from the palace door and sneered, Chang'eng thinks that if we believe them, we believe them. If we don't believe them, we don't believe them. Old man, His Majesty is asking you a question. Why are you talking like a monk from the Thunder Sound Temple? Before the Immortal Emperor could speak, one of the immortal generals roared. His awe-inspiring sword-like awe-inspiring aura rushed over without any hesitation. Hee. Tai-bai jinxing didn't care. He waved the horsetail whisk and blocked the awe-inspiring aura. He sneered, Tianji Palace has intercepted the messages from the 4 great clans to the 4 princes more than once. They are well aware of it. Since they don't want to admit it, Heavenly King Qing Yu, are you going to force them to admit it? Don't tell me that these 4 brats are constantly communicating with the 4 great clans of the hidden immortal continent. The immortal general called Heavenly King Qing Yu retorted, even the immortal officials under your command, Confucianism, legalism, School of Agriculture, School of Yin-Yang, School of Miscellany, etc. are secretly communicating with the various clans of the hidden immortal continent. Why don't you force them to admit it? The civil officials under this old man's command are mostly from the 100 schools of Confucianism. Although these immortal officials are ranked among the immortals, their origins are from the various great worlds of the hidden immortal continent. They are different from the military schools of the Immortal Palace. Tai-bai jinxing seemed to know Heavenly King Qing Yu's temper. He didn't get angry and slowly replied, "This old man can win over some people's hearts, but I can't control everyone's will. Isn't that enough?" Heavenly King Qing Yu's mouth twitched. He wanted to say something. "Millimeter." The immortal emperor's voice sounded. Heavenly King Qing Yu hurriedly lowered his head and stopped talking. What Tai Bai Jinxing said was naturally the current situation of the immortal palace. It was also the situation since ancient times. Although the immortal emperor occupied the immortal palace and was the leader of the schools of Confucianism, the power of the military schools couldn't completely control the immortal palace. When the disciples of the 100 schools of Confucianism, legalism, Moism, etc. reached a certain cultivation level, they would definitely choose some people to take up positions in the immortal palace. The positions of these immortal officials might not be very high. However, for many years, the immortal palace's various powers were intertwined. The conflicts and alliances between them were endless. This really gave the immortal emperor a headache. In order to make the immortal palace feel at ease and balance the conflicts between the immortal palace and the hidden immortal continent, the 4 great clans even specially sent the direct descendants of the 4 great clans to the immortal palace as hostages. These methods couldn't stop the conflicts between the various schools of Confucianism. On top of these conflicts, under the negligence of the immortal officials, the immortal emperor felt like he was a mere figurehead. How could Tai Bai Jinxing and the others not know the predicament of the immortal emperor? Hearing the immortal emperor's cold snort, they naturally didn't dare to speak. After a while, the immortal emperor asked, "Did the 4 great clans report to the immortal palace?" Tai Bai Jinxing hurriedly replied, "Reporting to your majesty, this old subject hasn't seen them yet. However, in this old subject's opinion, once their reports arrive, it'll be time for the dagger to be revealed. Does your majesty think their reports are good? Or is it better not to come?" The immortal emperor calmly asked, "What do you think, dear subject? In this old subject's opinion, your majesty summoned the 4 great clans' heirs today as a warning and also a test. I believe the 4 great clans' heirs aren't fools. They will definitely inform their own clans of your majesty's intentions." At this point, Tai Bai Jinxing hesitated slightly before continuing. "In addition, your majesty, this old subject feels that there seems to be a gap between the 4 great clans. Your majesty might as well use this gap to relieve the pressure at this time." "Hehe, you think you're the only one who can see it? That I don't know." The immortal emperor smiled slightly. If it were any other time, this tactic of sowing discord might be useful. However, at this moment, even if Dongfang Huiyun passes this message to the Dongfang clan, he will only be reprimanded and make them wary. Yes, this old subject is slow-witted. Tai Bai Jinxing hurriedly nodded. The immortal emperor asked again, "How many of the immortal palace's officials are calling for war?" "Your majesty, this old subject has already presented 406 memorials to your majesty. 361 of them are calling for war. Only 65 of them are for peace." Tai Bai Jinxing methodically replied, "As for the 521 memorials that have yet to be presented to your majesty, 410 are calling for war, and 111 are calling for peace." After saying this, Tai Bai Jinxing hesitated for a moment before continuing in a low voice, "As for the peace memorials, most of them were submitted by my military disciples." "Millimeter." The immortal emperor nodded. His tone was somewhat gloomy as if he was thinking about something. After a moment, he said, "Perfected Lord Qingyuan, do you think?" As soon as he said this, the immortal emperor immediately came to a realization and stopped. How could Tai Bai Jinxing not know what the immortal emperor was thinking? He hurriedly smiled and said, "Your Majesty, perfected Lord Qingyuan has already been punished and has been banished to Black Ruins Mountain. He is currently not in the immortal palace. Actually, Your Majesty, perfected Lord Qingyuan is extremely loyal to Your Majesty. He is completely selfless. For the sake of the lives of his subordinates, the giant spirit immortal generals, he spared the Black Wind Ridge's wild path. This is a display of our immortal palace's benevolence. Furthermore, how can a wild path compare to a general of our Sun Palace? Your Majesty, there is truly no need to banish perfected Lord Qingyuan." "That's right, Your Majesty." Heavenly King Qing Yu hurriedly stepped forward and said, Perfected Lord Qingyuan has acted magnanimously in this matter. He has also clearly stated his grudge with that wild path. If he wanted to play favoritism and commit irregularities, why would he go down to the lower realm? In fact, with just a bit of information, that wild path would have fled long ago. How could he possibly wait for the heavenly network to surround Blackwind Ridge? Black Ruins Mountain is the most dangerous place at the edge of the Immortal Palace. Even this lowly subject doesn't dare to underestimate it. Perfected Lord Qingyuan's strength. Chumph, is it because I am willing to banish Sun Jian? The Immortal Emperor laughed coldly. Isn't this all because of their coercion? Don't they want to use this as a pretext to attack my prestige? If I don't banish Sun Jian, I will end up as an incapable ruler. But if I do banish Sun Jian, I will still be the one to suffer. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame Sun Jian for being too upright. He doesn't know how to be flexible. He has some illicit relations with that wild path. Why report it to me? Can't he just keep it to himself? If he speaks of it, won't others be able to use it against him? Tell me, how should I deal with this? Actually, Tai Bai Jinxing smiled apologetically. According to this old subject's knowledge, Sun Gang of the Hall of Enlightenment just happened to be nearby. I'm afraid Perfected Lord Qingyuan was afraid that others would say something, right? Hall of Enlightenment's Sun Gang? The Immortal Emperor was slightly taken aback. After a moment, he laughed coldly. This Sun Gang is merely a child. Why did he descend to the lower realm? Could it be that the always well-behaved Xin had other thoughts? 13. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.